Hi, welcome to my channel. The full version of the audiobook is available on my Patreon. You can quickly find it through the link in my profile description. Thank you for your support.
Chapter 1. The story begins with a time travel adventure, followed by a reward of 2 big blouses from the head coach. The stadium in Bakha Province, 2011. A short, stout, bald middle-aged man was standing in front of a group of young players in white team uniforms, giving them a speech. "You all better hold back a bit. We need to concede at least 3 goals to the Nanha provincial team today. Anyone who tries to ruin things for me will be in for a world of hurt. Lin Yi. Especially you. What were you doing being so aggressive in the first half? Trying to go against me? Believe me or not, I'll kick you out. Did you fucking hear me?" Lin Yi jolted awake, opened his eyes, and heard the bald, short, fat man opposite him roaring at him. "Holy crap. Isn't that bastard He Dogwang? What's he doing here?" Lin Yi was immediately filled with doubt. Then he saw a group of players wearing white North River team uniforms around him. Looking at those familiar faces from his memory, Lin Yi was completely stunned. "Aren't these my former teammates from the provincial teams? Have I traveled through time?" Upon reviewing He Dogwang's words, Lin Yi suddenly felt a chill. "Isn't this the match from over 10 years ago that I still remember so vividly? It was originally just an ordinary Chinese Football League 1 match. The 2 teams facing off are North Rhine-Westphalia and South Rhine-Westphalia. Lin Yi's team, Bakha Province's head coach He Dogwang, had accepted money from the Nanha Province team before the competition. Therefore, he asked his players to throw the game. Lin Yi, the team's main forward, deeply abhorred this kind of thing. So during the game, they didn't hold back at all, and even scored a goal at the end of the first half. This greatly annoyed He Dogwang. I remember in my previous life, not long after the start of the second half, He Dogwang substituted Lin Dong directly. After Lin Yi was substituted, and with no one causing trouble, Nanha Province finally scored consecutive goals in the remaining time of the game, ultimately defeating Bakha Province 3-1. Lin Yi, however, was resented by He Dogwang. In a later training match, he instructed other players to break Lin Yi's right leg. This effectively ended Lin Yi's entire professional career, preventing him from ever playing football again. In the end, he could only drag his injured leg back to school, hoping to pass the college entrance examination and get into university. However, because he had been practicing ball sports all the time, his academic studies were a complete mess, and he couldn't keep up at all. In the end, he only got into a 4th-rate diploma mill during the college entrance examination. "After graduating, I barely managed to find a job with the help of my family, becoming an ordinary office worker." He could never become the glorious star he dreamed of. Recalling his past life, Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh. If he hadn't been injured, given his talent to become a key player for a Chinese Super League team at the age of 17, it would have been highly likely that he would have entered the national team and become a star player watched by everyone in the country. Unlike later years, when I wasted my time and accomplished nothing. The reason for all of this is this guy he hates. Thinking of this, his gaze toward He Dogwang instantly turned gloomy. "Lin Yi. What kind of look is that? Did you hear what I said? If you dare to go against me again, watch out for your legs." Seeing Lin Yi's gaze, He Dogwang felt a sudden unease in his heart for no apparent reason. Then he flew into a rage and began to scold Lin Dong. Hearing He Dogwang's words, Lin Yi became even more furious. The lack of development of Chinese football is directly related to these guys who only know how to make money and disregard professional ethics. Having been given a second chance at life, how could I allow myself to be manipulated by such a parasite and clown again? Lin Yi slowly walked out of the line and came to He Dogwang. What are you going to do?" Upon seeing Lin Yi approach, He Dogwang felt a sudden pang of panic. However, being used to acting arrogantly, he subconsciously assumed that Lin Yi had come to apologize. Smack! Just as he was about to reprimand Lin Rui a few more times, Lin Yi suddenly raised his hand and delivered a powerful slap to his back. Caught off guard, He Dogwang was slapped squarely across the left cheek, sending him spinning in place. He stared at Lin Yi in shock and anger, almost unable to believe his eyes. "Lin Yi. You bastard, you dare hit me." Smack. Ouch. Before he could finish speaking, he received another solid slap on his right cheek. The surrounding players were all dumbfounded. No one expected that Lin Yi would actually go up and beat He Dogwang up. This is something they've wanted to do but never dared to. Every player with a conscience and professional ethics would deeply abhor He Dogwang's decision to fix matches. However, under He Dogwang's tyranny, they could only dare to be angry but not speak out. Now that's settled, Lin Yi beat them up, finally venting their anger. After slapping him twice, Lin Yi finally felt relieved. He clapped his hands, turned around, and walked off the field. Behind him came He Dogwang's furious voice. Lin Yi, you just wait. I'll make sure you can't stay in Chinese football. Lin Yi turned a deaf ear to this. Having been given a second chance at life, I naturally want to live it to the fullest. At this moment, Lin Yi's mind was perfectly clear. Ding! Host's inner demons detected. King of the Ball system activated. System is starting up. Activation progress 10%. Activation progress 30%. Activation progress 99%. King of Football system activated. Just as Lin Yi stepped off the court, a voice rang out in his mind. Lin Yi was immediately stunned. King of Football system. What is that? Just as Lin Yi was wondering, a transparent panel that only he could see appeared in front of him. The information displayed on the panel is his various data. Name, Lin Yi. Host's basic physical data. Age, 17, height, 178 centimeters, weight, 63 kilograms. Host's basic ability values. Speed, 81, strength, 60, jumping, 70, stamina, 61, coordination, 72. Host technical ability values. Shooting, 63, passing, 61, ball control, 60, heading, 57, set pieces, 65, defense, 51, tackling, 55, possession, 68, first touch, 69. Skills, none. Overall rating, 61. Upon seeing this rating, Lin Yi couldn't help but shake his head and smile wryly. To think that a talented player in the province could receive such a low rating. This was something he found hard to accept. However, the system quickly provided a reference standard. The standard for substitute players in the top 5 leagues is 70 to 75 points. Standard for key players in ordinary teams in the top 5 leagues, 75 to 80 points. Standard for ordinary players in the top 5 league teams, 80 to 85 points. Standard for key players of the top 5 league teams, 85 points or above. Superstar standard in the top 5 leagues, 90 points or above. Looking at it this way, my score of 61 doesn't seem so unacceptable anymore. After all, although I have some talent, I am still young, only 17 years old, and I am playing in the Chinese First Division. Even Hua Chao didn't make it. Not to mention the top 5 leagues. Thinking of this, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Given my current form, when will I be able to play in one of the top 5 leagues? At this moment, Lin Yi noticed another option below the system panel, which read, System User Manual. Lin Yi immediately became interested and clicked on the link. Chapter 2 Max Level Speed, the newbie gift pack is awesome. King of Balls System User Guide. This system is a super football system designed specifically to cultivate football kings. Using this system, the host can clearly see the results of their training. The system will update various values in the system in real time based on the host's training time and training content. The host's training results in the real world will be displayed in the system in real time. The system will also issue tasks from time to time. The host will receive a reward upon completing the task. After reading the system description in the system manual, Lin Yi roughly understood the system's principles. Simply put, it's a device that can display your training results in real time. The effectiveness of training for the average person cannot be quantified. It's only a rough estimate of one's own skill level. Now that he has the system, he can quantify his training results. This will allow him to have an objective understanding of his own level. And most importantly, the system also offers task rewards. Although I don't know what the rewards for the mission are. But that's a bug. With this, I might actually go very far on the path of football. Lin Yi felt a surge of excitement. However, now that he has defeated the head coach, he probably won't be able to stay in the country anymore. It's estimated that no team in the country would want a player who beats up the head coach. Moreover, the domestic football environment has left him utterly disappointed. Perhaps I should leave this place and go out to find a new world. However, with his current level of skill, it would be quite difficult for him to secure a place in a foreign league. Do I have to train for a while first? Lin Yi was somewhat embarrassed. But just then, the system voice rang in my mind again. To support your football career, we are gifting you a beginner's gift pack. Please accept it. New player gift pack. Lin Yi hadn't expected this to exist. I quickly looked closely and saw a red envelope icon appear on the panel. Lin Yi immediately reached out and tapped. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the maximum speed attribute. Your speed can be increased to 100. Max speed attribute has been loaded, host speed increased to 100. Attention, host. Based on your current training level and physical condition, your maximum speed is 10 seconds for 100 meters and 3.75 seconds for 30 meters. You can continue to improve your performance through more scientific training. Keep it up. As the system notification sounded, Lin Yi suddenly felt his body fall into a momentary daze. After he recovered, he suddenly felt that his body seemed different. The muscles and bones in his body seemed to have undergone some kind of change, especially his legs, where an explosive power seemed to be hidden, ready to be unleashed at any moment. Feeling the changes in his body, Lin Yi was overjoyed. He knew that the system was modifying his body. 100 meters in 10 seconds. That's simply defying the heavens. In football matches, a player's speed is a very important ability. Those fast players on the field sometimes don't need fancy techniques, they can sweep across a large area simply with their super speed. His speed rating was previously 81, which was considered quite good for the team. His best 100-meter time is 11.5 seconds. While this result may not be comparable to that of professional sprinters, it is still considered above average among football players. Now he has improved his sprint time to 10 seconds for 100 meters. This result is good enough to qualify for IAAF competitions. Looking across the whole of China, there are probably not many people who can run faster than me. I remember back in my previous life, it wasn't until the 2021 Olympics that Chinese sprint star Su Shen set a time of 9.83 seconds. That was already the fastest record for a Chinese athlete. Aside from Su Shen, there are really very few other people who can run under 10 seconds. But Su Shen is a professional sprinter. They train specifically to run fast year after year, which is why they achieved such results. At the young age of 17 without any professional sprint training is already incredible. Moreover, the system also said that with further system training, one's grades can be improved. It's important to understand that once you reach a certain level in sprinting, it's extremely difficult to improve. Now, with systematic sprint training, I can significantly improve my performance. Maybe I can actually achieve Suarez's or even Usain Bolt's 9.58-second record. Thinking about this, Lin Yi hesitated whether he should switch to sprinting. Perhaps winning a world sprint championship wouldn't be bad either. That achievement is no less than becoming a football superstar. However, as soon as this thought crossed my mind, a system notification sounded. Attention, host. This system was developed specifically for football. If you change your profession, this system will automatically become invalid. Please be aware. What is that? Lin Yi was speechless for a moment. This guy is forcing himself to play football. Left with no other choice, Lin Yi had to give up his tempting idea of becoming a sprinter and instead continue studying the system. He discovered that in the system, his speed in the basic ability attribute column had increased from 81 to 100. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. Besides speed, his jumping ability jumped from 70 to 75, his coordination from 72 to 80, and his strength from 60 to 65. His fitness level went from 61 to 66. He even gained 1 kilogram. In addition, his skill stats have also changed in several aspects. The ball possession stat increased from 61 to 65, defense from 51 to 59, tackles from 55 to 63, headers from 57 to 63, and finishing from 68 to 72. His overall score rose from 61 to 69. The overall score jumped by 8 points, which was somewhat unexpected for Lin Yi. However, upon closer reflection, it becomes understandable. After all, your speed has increased, and the strength of your muscles and bones has increased accordingly. Otherwise, it simply wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of high speed. Improvements in musculoskeletal structure will naturally affect strength and jumping ability. As for coordination, if the body is not coordinated enough, it is impossible to run at a very fast speed. Therefore, with the increase in speed, the most affected aspect is coordination. Furthermore, the improvement in basic physical abilities leads to a corresponding improvement in technical skills. Especially those technical skills that require physical exertion. For example, with headers, if your jumping ability increases and you jump higher, your heading ability will naturally improve accordingly. In addition, skills such as stealing and defense, if the speed is faster, the speed of chasing back and the speed of reaction will also increase accordingly, and the score will naturally increase accordingly. The same principle applies to improvements in other areas. After the adjustment, Lin Yi's system data was also updated. Name, Lin Yi. Basic body data. Age, 17, height, 178 centimeters, weight, 64 kilograms. Basic values. Speed, 100, strength, 65, jumping, 75, stamina, 66, coordination, 80. Post-technical capabilities. Shooting, 63, passing, 61, ball control, 65, heading, 63, set pieces, 65, defense, 59, tackling, 63, possession, 72, first touch, 69. Skills, none. Overall rating, 69. At this point, his overall rating is almost at the standard of a substitute player in the top 5 leagues. This newbie gift pack is really good. This gave Lin Yi even more confidence in what lay ahead. However, before that, Lin Yi first had to solve the problem of where to go. Chapter 3, Banned from the competition. I'm a person with a system. A day later, Lin Yi received a notice of dismissal from the team, and at the same time, the Chinese Football Association also issued a disciplinary notice. Lin Yi, a player for the Beihai provincial team, has been severely punished for assaulting his head coach. The punishment is as follows: effective immediately, Lin Yi is suspended for 5 years and is prohibited from participating in any domestic leagues or cup competitions during this period. We hope that other players and coaches will take this as a warning. Lin Yi wasn't surprised at all upon seeing the notification. He Dogwang has some connections within the Chinese Football Association. Dealing with a player like Lin Yi, who has no background whatsoever, is a piece of cake. Moreover, this time it was Lin Yi who initiated the fight. So it's even simpler. If an ordinary player were to be banned for 5 years, it would basically mean the end of their football career. Imagine not being able to play in a match for 5 years, even the most talented person would be wasted. However, Lin Yi had no intention of continuing to work in China, so he didn't care about the punishment at all. However, when Lin Yi's father, Lin Jianghe, learned of this, he was furious. He wasn't angry at Lin Yi for hitting someone, but at He Dogwang's shamelessness. That son of a bitch He Dogwang. All the gifts I gave him as tribute, and he pulls this on me. Not only does he take money to fix matches, but he even dares to make my son fix matches for him. I'll kill him. Lin Jianghe, a tall man standing at 1.85 meters, with a full beard, looked truly frightening with his fierce expression after his outburst of rage. He was a demobilized soldier. After his demobilization, he was not assigned a job. Instead, he received his discharge pay and opened a general store with Lin Yi's mother, Zhang Li. Although years of doing business have softened his edges in dealing with people and things. However, his inherent military instincts of hating evil and upholding integrity still drove him to a complete rage upon hearing about his son's ordeal. Looking at his father's appearance, Lin Yi felt a surge of warmth in his heart. His father didn't blame him for his impulsive act, instead, he stood behind him and unconditionally supported him. In his memory, it was just like this in his previous life. After his right leg was crippled, Lin Jianghe went to cause trouble for He Dogwang with a kitchen knife. He heard that He Dogwang was scared half to death and hid in his office, too afraid to come out. If the police hadn't arrived in time, things would probably have been very difficult to resolve. Lin Jianghe was detained for half a month as a result. After he came out, he wanted to go find He Dogwang, but Zhang Liqiang pulled him away from doing so. When they returned to face their inability to play football, they were saddened, but never showed it. That period was probably the most difficult time for Lin Jianghe. Later, when he failed his college entrance exam, he didn't say much. He still silently supported him. Even when he transmigrated, although he accomplished nothing, Lin Jianghe never said anything. Instead, he kept encouraging Lin Yi, telling him to be down-to-earth and hard-working, and that he would eventually have food to eat. In Lin Yi's memory, Lin Jianghe was like a mountain he could rely on, always silently supporting him from behind. It's just that I was too useless in my past life and failed to properly take care of my partner. I even caused them a lot of worry. In this life, having been given a second chance, I am determined to live a life worthy of someone else, making the other person proud of me. Seeing that Lin Jianghe seemed to be about to lose control again, Lin Yi quickly spoke up to dissuade him. "Dad, don't act rashly. I'm fine. I didn't want to stay with the team in the first place anyway. What kind of future can you have playing under someone like He Dogwang?" Hearing his son's words, Lin Jianghe stopped searching for a suitable tool, gave him a deep look, and then sighed heavily, saying, "Sigh. That's true, but now you're banned for 5 years. Doesn't that mean your professional career is over?" Lin Jianghe is a football fan, and his biggest dream is to train his son to become a professional player. He spared no expense each year to cultivate Lin Yi's ball skills. Lin Yi lived up to expectations, entering the Chinese Football Association League at the age of 17. This is definitely considered genius among people of the same age. Lin Jianghe is very proud of this. But now she suddenly heard the news that her son had been banned from competition. How could he not be anxious? "It's okay. If I can't play domestically, I can go abroad. I plan to go to Europe in the next couple of days. Even if I start with some small teams, it's better than staying in this messy domestic environment." Lin Yi smiled and comforted his father. "Huh? Europe?" Lin Jianghe paused for a moment. However, he quickly added with a worried look, "Europe is nice, but you'll be unfamiliar with the place and the people there. Who would want you?" "It's alright, I'll try out one team at a time. Eventually, a team will want me. After all, your son is a genius. Only a fool would let go of a genius like me." Lin Yi patted his chest, looking confident. "Hey. You're right. You're a genius. Those European teams would be blind to have you. We'll have to carefully consider which team you end up with. So, what do you think of Bayern Munich?" Lin Jianghe's emotions surged immediately. He's a Bayern Munich fan, and if his son could play for Bayern, he'd probably be laughing in his sleep. Perhaps Bayern's youth team would be a better fit for me," Lin Dong said with a good sense of self-awareness. The youth team, it'll do. It's not as flashy as the first team, but it's still Bayern Munich, after all. Alright. Let's go to Bayern. Book our plane tickets now, we'll leave tomorrow." Lin Jianghe threw away the cigarette but in his hand and made a decision directly. "Us? You're coming with me?" "Nonsense. How can I feel at ease letting a little kid like you run so far by yourself?" "Oh well." Lin Dong had no choice but to accept his father's arrangement. Ding. Main quest triggered. Sign a professional contract within half a month and become a glorious professional player again. Quest reward, a golden gift pack. Just then, the system's synthesized voice rang in Lin Yi's mind. "Huh? There's a mission already? And the reward is a gold gift pack. However, the content of this task, well, it's probably quite difficult." Although he made it sound easy, finding a suitable team that would accept him is definitely not an easy task. Given his current level, it's practically impossible for him to join a top-tier team in one of the 5 major leagues. Putting aside the fact that his rating is still some distance from that of a first-team substitute, the first-team selection criteria are definitely not such that just because someone claims to be a genius, they will be given a chance. Those players who manage to stay in the top teams of the 5 major leagues are all geniuses selected from all over the world. In top leagues, there is no shortage of geniuses. If you're a young player who used to only play in low-level leagues like the Chinese Super League, which nobody would even give a second glance, they'd probably reject you outright as soon as they see your resume. They won't even give you a chance to try out. However, if you go to some lower-level leagues, such as the 4th or 5th tier of the top 5 leagues, that might be possible for a team to want you, but the level of that league might not even be as good as the Chinese Super League, so why would you go there? Therefore, Lin Yi's choices were really limited to the youth teams of those top clubs, or the 2nd and 3rd tiers of the top 5 leagues. However, these teams are not so easy to get into. Especially considering that I came from China, a football wasteland. It's something that makes people distrust you by nature. The road ahead was fraught with difficulties, but Lin Yi did not back down in the slightest. If all else fails, we can try one team at a time, we'll eventually find a team willing to take us on. I'm a man with a system. Lin Yi clenched his fist. Chapter 4, Dortmund Trial, I want to go to U23. 2 days later, Lin Yi and Lin Jianghe stood outside the training base of Bayern Munich's youth team. They stared blankly at the base's gate, wide-eyed. They were just turned away by security. Bayern Munich didn't even give them a chance to try out. Bayern Munich's youth academy director, Johann Sauer, immediately lost interest after learning that Lin Yi had only played in the 2nd division of the Chinese Football League. He didn't even call the youth team's head coach over to check on them, he simply asked the two of them to leave. Lin Jianghe was unwilling to give up and wanted to fight for it again. However, due to the language barrier and his somewhat agitated state, Johann Sauer assumed he was up to no good. So I called security. And just like that, the Lin family father and son were pushed out by several burly security guards. Damn it! That bald guy. He's ruined Bayern's image in my mind. Mad. Let's not go to Bayern. Let's try another club. Lin Jianghe angrily cursed. The bald man he was referring to was, of course, Bayern Munich's youth academy director, Johann Saul. The other person had a very distinctive bald head with a shiny bald patch. Lin Jianghe was truly enraged by the other party's arrogant attitude. They're incredibly arrogant to not even give us a chance to try out. It's okay, Dad. It's their loss that they don't want me. I promise they'll regret it later. We'll go look at other families. Lin Yi gently comforted his father. However, 2 cold glints shot out from his eyes. He wasn't just saying that casually. Once he makes a name for himself in the football world, he'll settle the score for what happened today. Son, you're right. They'll definitely regret what happened today. Since Bayern doesn't want you, let's go to their old rivals, Borussia Dortmund. Although I didn't like them before. Lin Jianghe was also inspired to fight by Lin Yi. Okay. Let's go to Dortmund. Lin Yi completely agreed with his father's opinion. 2 days later, at the Dortmund Youth Training Center. Dortmund's youth academy director, Ricken, was on the phone in his office. The call came from the security office at the base entrance, saying that 2 people wanted to come for a trial training. Ricken assumed it was just another arrogant fan trying their luck. So they immediately wanted the security guards to kick the other person out. However, after the security guard finished reporting, he said something else that immediately changed his mind. Mr. Ricken, you know what? Just now, that boy at the training base entrance, trying to convince me, even showed me his skills. To me, his fundamentals seemed quite solid. I can't believe he came up with such a way to get my attention, it was really interesting. Upon hearing what the security guard said, Rickington became somewhat interested. Thomas, what do you think of his skills? He asked this question because he knew that although the other person was just an ordinary security guard, he had a sharp eye due to his exposure to the world. If he says the other player's skills are good, then they really are. Yes, Ricken shows, I'm sure. Although his skills aren't fancy, you can tell he's definitely had professional training, not some amateur. And the kid looks very young. Security guard Thomas said with certainty. All right then, let them in. I want to see them for myself. Rickon decided to give them a chance. Yes, sir. At the entrance of the training base, a middle-aged, bearded security guard, having hung up his phone, walked out of the security room with a smile. He said to Lin Yi and his son Lin Jianghe, who were looking at him expectantly, "Go in. Go directly to the office on the 5th floor of the office building, on the west side, and find Mr. Rickon. He's the supervisor here. Good luck, young man." "Thank you, sir. You're such a kind person." Lin Yi thanked the security guard in his broken German. This is something he just learned from translation software. Thanks to the advancement of technology, he is able to have some simple communication with the other party even when they don't speak the same language. Soon, the two men arrived at the 5th floor of the office building as instructed by the security guard and found Rickon. "You said you came from China?" Looking at the travel-worn father and son, Rickon asked. Rickon seemed somewhat surprised after hearing that they had come all the way from China. Although people often come to the training base to recommend themselves, it is still rare to see someone travel this far. "Yes, sir. This is my resume." Lin Yi handed over his resume. This was a resume he had prepared before leaving the country, written in German. It was actually very simple. I just gave a brief introduction to my professional experience. Rickon casually flipped through the pages and saw that Lin Yi had participated in professional competitions in China before, and nodded slightly. Although Chinese football is not very good, it is still a professional competition. Players who can play in professional matches have at least undergone systematic training. Moreover, considering Lin Yi's age, he is only 17 years old, which is an age that can still be molded. He closed the resume, looked at Lin Yi, and asked, "Which stage of the team are you looking to join?" "U23, sir." Lin Yi had already found out that Dortmund's U23 team was also their second-string team, playing in the German 3rd division. The other U19 and U17 teams are in lower-level regional leagues. This held little appeal for Lin Yi. Therefore, his only goal is the U23 team. U23. Ha! Young man, you have quite the ambition. But I don't think you're good enough to find a place in U23. You should consider U19 instead, perhaps it's a better fit for you there. Rickon said it very directly. "Sir, I believe my skill level is definitely up to U23 standards. Could you arrange a trial for me? I won't let you down." Lin Yi patted his chest confidently. Seeing Lin Yi's actions, Rickon found it somewhat amusing. He felt even more favorably disposed towards this confident young man. He chuckled and said, "All right then, you can give it a try. Maybe you really can surprise me. But I must warn you, Daniel isn't someone to be fooled. If he thinks you're not up to the task, then I can only apologize." Rickon picked up the phone and dialed a number. The call was answered quickly. "Hannah, come to my office." Soon, a blonde girl in her early 20s walked in. "Hannah, take these two to Daniel and ask him to arrange a trial for this young man." Rickon gave the instructions. "Okay." Hannah nodded respectfully, then nodded to Lin Yi and the other man. "Please follow me." Then he turned around and left the office. Lin Yi and Lin Jianghe quickly thanked Rickon and then followed him. Chapter 5, Field Tryouts, only an idiot would chase after that. Hannah led the two out of the office building and toward the training field. Only then did Lin Yi have time to carefully observe the situation at the training base. This training base appears to have at least a dozen standard training fields. From their appearance, it's clear that these stadiums are well maintained and have excellent training facilities. At this time, many stadiums were filled with players wearing jerseys from various Borussia Dortmund youth teams, training together. Hannah led Lin Yi and the other person for about 5 or 6 minutes before they arrived at the edge of a sports field. Even from a great distance, Lin Yi could hear a voice roaring. "Da hud. Can you fucking hurry up? My pet tortoise is faster than you. Rachiel. Watch your back, don't just run around aimlessly. Rainier. Are your eyes on your ass? Didn't you see Mourinho had already made a forward run? Why didn't you pass that damn ball to him?" Hearing these roars, even though Lin Yi couldn't understand what they were shouting, the sheer force of their voices was enough to send chills down one's spine. Lin Yi grinned. It seemed this head coach had quite a temper. As Lin Yi approached, he saw a burly man with a full beard standing on the sidelines, giving instructions to the players of the two teams who were having a training match. "Mr. Daniel, this is Lin and his father from China. Mr. Ricken wants you to arrange a trial for them. Then report the results to him." Hannah approached the burly man and introduced Lin Yi to him. "A Chinese person? That's rare. Alright, since it was arranged by Ricken, I'll handle it." Daniel looked a little impatient, but still turned to Lin Yi and asked gruffly, "Kid, what position do you play?" "I can play as a winger or an attacking midfielder, sir." Lin Yi answered very respectfully. "Okay, I'll let you play for half an hour in a bit. If your performance doesn't satisfy me, then I'm sorry. Now, you can change your clothes and then warm up." After Daniel finished speaking, he turned to his assistant and said, "Get him a jersey. After he warms up, let him come on and replace Reiner." The assistant agreed and quickly found a jersey, handing it to Lin Yi. Lin Yi grabbed his jersey, went to the side, and quickly changed. A few minutes later, seeing that Lin Yi was ready, Daniel clapped and paused the game. Then he beckoned a young white man down and said, "Raynel, you come down first." After Reiner left the field, he said to Lin Yi, who was still waiting on the sidelines, "You'll be playing right winger in a bit. Good luck." "Yes, sir." Lin Yi nodded to indicate that he understood, and then quickly ran onto the court. It seems to be moving quite fast." Daniel nodded slightly as he watched Lin Yi run at a certain speed. Regardless of his ball skills, this guy is certainly quite fast. The assistant coach had already given the players on the field a clear explanation. At this point, all the players knew that the newly arrived Asian boy was there for a tryout. The players weren't particularly curious about this, because they've seen this kind of thing far too often. As a renowned youth training center throughout Germany, Dortmund attracts players for trials almost every few days. However, in the end, only a very few were able to stay. Because here, there is no shortage of all kinds of geniuses. At most, they were just a little curious about Lin Yi's Asian appearance. Because Asians are indeed quite rare here. "Hey kid. I'm Reina, your team's captain. I'll pass you the ball in a bit, but you need to get into the right position. So, good luck." A handsome white man, about 1.8 meters tall, with long blonde hair, came to Lin Yi's side first and greeted him in English. Although Lin Yi's English wasn't very good, he could still understand simple conversations. Coupled with the other person's expressions and gestures, Lin Yi immediately understood what they meant. He nodded to the other person and replied with a smile, "Don't worry, I've always been lucky." Then he looked at his father, who was staring at him expectantly from the sidelines, made a gesture to reassure him, and ran towards the front of the field. "Xiao Yi. Keep it up. Show them how good you are." Watching his son's figure, Lin Jianghe encouraged him loudly. Lin Yi didn't turn around, but simply raised his right fist and swung it forcefully. Soon, with the assistant coach acting as the temporary referee blowing his whistle, the trial match officially began. As soon as the game started, Lin Yi felt that the pace of the game was completely different from what he had experienced in the domestic league before. These U23 players may not be as skilled as the professional players in China. However, their passing and receiving coordination, rhythm control, and awareness in attack and defense are all more advanced. Their transitions between offense and defense are very fast, their handling of the ball is also very fast, and their movements are clean and concise. Unlike domestic teams, which often have problems like waiting for the ball or holding onto it for too long. This made the whole competition very smooth. Lin Yi, having played domestically, is finding it somewhat difficult to adapt at first. Therefore, mistakes inevitably occurred in the first few passes and receptions of the game. Watching Lin Yi's failure to make a timely forward run, which led to Reiner's through ball being blocked by the opposing goalkeeper, Daniel on the sidelines couldn't help but shake his head. He turned to Hannah, a hint of impatience in his eyes, and said, "I think Ricken misjudged this time. I don't think that kid can find a place on my team. Perhaps sending him to the U19 team for a couple of years to hone his skills would be the right thing to do." "That's your decision. I just brought him over." "Oh my goodness." Hannah was calmly talking to Daniel when suddenly something seemed to happen on the court, causing her to look very surprised and involuntarily exclaim, Seeing Hannah's expression, Daniel quickly turned his head to look at the court. Then he saw a figure running across the field like a bolt of lightning. Upon closer inspection, Daniel realized that the figure was the Chinese boy who had just come on stage. Wait F*********. Daniel uttered a phrase expressing his shock, but his eyes remained fixed on the figure. Just now, Lin Yi's B-team defender didn't control the power of his long pass well, and kicked the ball too hard, causing it to go off track and heading straight for the right corner area. Seeing the power, speed, and landing point of the ball, no one wanted to chase it anymore. Chasing such a ball is pointless, it's just a waste of energy. I bet only an idiot would chase after that. However, at that moment, a figure suddenly started moving from near the center line on the right side. His start was incredibly fast, he almost instantly passed the left back of Team A in front of him. Then, following the right sideline, he chased after the football that was flying through the air. Chapter 6, A Rapid Sprint, Cutting Through the Entire Court. When the football took to the air, Lin Yi knew that his chance had come. After briefly assessing the direction and speed of the football, he rushed out. The players on Team A saw Lin Yi rush out, they didn't react much. Many people even showed expressions of disdain and contempt in their eyes. Why are you chasing this ball? It's useless except for wasting energy. It seems this guy who came for the trial isn't very bright. With this level of football intelligence, how can he possibly stay at the talent-filled Borussia Dortmund U23 team? Indeed, football is not a suitable sport for Chinese people. At that moment, only Lin Jianghe on the sidelines was shouting loudly, "Go! Xiao Yi! Charge!" His shout immediately drew glares from the crowd. However, when Lin Yi rushed past Guerrero, the left back of Team A, in an instant, everyone's expression changed. Holy crap! This guy is way too fast. Guerrero only felt a gust of wind pass by his side, and then the figure that was originally in front of him was now behind him. By the time he turned around, the figure was already 5 or 6 meters away from him. Back up! Guerrero shouted loudly. At the same time, he immediately lifted his leg and chased after Lin Yi. To his despair, the figure seemed to disappear further and further away. The other players in Group A also realized what was happening at this point. The players closest to Lin Yi immediately retreated in a panic. Some chased after Lin Yi, while others began running towards their own restricted area. With Lin Yi's high-speed sprint as a backdrop, these people looked extremely disheveled. Meanwhile, the football flying through the air had already begun to fall. Lin Yi exerted force with his feet again, which increased his speed once more. Just as the football was about to land on the grass, Lin Yi arrived. Unable to adjust in time, Lin Yi stretched out his right foot and stepped forward. The soccer ball hit the outside of his foot. His feet dipped slightly, dissipating most of the impact. He brought the football to a stop about a meter in front of him. However, due to the impact of inertia, his body appeared somewhat unsteady. However, he did not fall. Instead, he used his waving arms to steady himself, albeit somewhat awkwardly. With a forward dash, Lin Yi caught up with the football that was still rolling forward. At this time, the Group A players chasing behind him were still a long way off. He stretched out his leg and flicked the ball to the left, then dribbled towards the goal. Upon seeing Lin Yi's action, Group A's goalkeeper, Kobel, immediately felt threatened and began to retreat towards the goal. At the same time, he anxiously called to his teammates to come and defend. At this moment, the closest Group A defender to the goal was centre-back Zagadou. He was running desperately into the restricted area. If things had gone according to plan, he should have been able to intercept Lin Yi before Lin Yi cut inside into the penalty area. If he can intercept the opponent outside the penalty area, he can either break the ball or commit a foul to disrupt Lin Yi's attack. However, imagination is beautiful, while reality is magical. Because Lin Yi is not a normal person. Just as Zagadou ran into the penalty area, Lin Yi appeared before him like a gust of wind. Startled, Zagadou instinctively reached out to grab the opponent's jersey. However, Lin Yi was too fast. The moment his hand reached out, Lin Yi's figure had already disappeared from his sight. His hand suddenly grasped at empty air. By the time he wanted to chase after him, he could only see Lin Yi's back. After getting past Zagadou who was tracking back, there was nothing left in Group A that could stop Lin Yi. Facing the flustered Koble who rushed out of the goal, Lin Yi took a low shot, and the ball went straight into the lower left corner of the goal. Goal! Koble slumped down on the grass in front of the door, looking utterly dejected. He had already tried his best, but he really couldn't shoot from such close range. What surprised him even more than the goal itself was the opponent's astonishing speed just before it was scored. As the goalkeeper, he witnessed the entire process of Lin Yi's movement, from starting the shot to stopping the ball and then cutting inside to shoot. He swears he's never seen such speed on a football field before. From midfield to the penalty area, a distance of several dozen meters, it really only takes the blink of an eye. Compared to him, his teammates were like an old car racing against a Ferrari. There's absolutely no way to compare them. This guy shouldn't be playing football, he should be training in track and field. Koble wasn't the only one with this idea. At this moment, all the players on the field were shocked. No one expected that the unassuming Chinese boy would be so fast. For a moment, the entire stadium fell silent. Beautiful. Well done, son. Lin Jianghe was the first to react, raising his arms and shouting from the sidelines. Wow, that's fast. Hannah murmured to herself, a look of surprise in her eyes. Good. Not bad. Looks like this guy has some skills. That's more like it. I knew Rickon wouldn't cheat me. Daniel's eyes began to show interest. He completely forgot that just now, he wanted Lin Yi to go to U19. On the field, after scoring, Lin Yi simply waved his arm in celebration before running back to the backfield. Hey! Kid, well done. Reina was the first to come up and give Lin Yi a big hug. The other players in Group B also came forward to celebrate Lin Yi's goal. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't expect you to be so fast. I thought that ball was going out of bounds, I didn't expect you to be able to catch it. Kid, you've really surprised me. You used to train in track and field, right? Otherwise, how could you be so fast? Lin Yi's performance successfully earned him the recognition of his teammates. In football, skill reigns supreme. If you demonstrate sufficient ability, you will earn praise and respect. Otherwise, nothing else matters. Now, Lin Yi has successfully gained recognition from others. The game soon resumed. Having conceded the first goal, were eager to equalize and launched a massive attack. In Group B, where Lin Yi is located, most of the players are substitutes for the team, so their strength is significantly weaker than that of Group A. While Group A launched a major offensive, they could only defend their own penalty area and park the bus in front of the goal. They wanted to fight back, but felt powerless to do so. This also caused Group A's formation to push further and further forward. In the end, their backcourt even pushed past the center line. This turned the game into a complete half-court offensive and defensive battle. In the 19th minute of the match, a team striker, Malin, took a long-range shot from outside the penalty area, which hit the B team's goalpost and bounced out. The rebounding ball was cleared away by a long kick from the still-shaken B team defender. The football soared high into the air, heading straight for Team A's half. Malone immediately let out a sigh. But just then, he suddenly heard a panicked shout from his teammates behind him. When he turned his head, he saw a figure wearing a green vest from Team B, chasing after the football that had just been cleared by a big kick. Chapter 7, Rapid Forward Run, Becoming an Official Dortmund U23 Player. Upon seeing this figure, Malin's eyes narrowed instantly. Isn't that the Chinese kid who just scored the goal? Thinking about how the opponent just scored, he immediately lost his composure. I instinctively wanted to run after him. However, after running only 2 steps, he abruptly stopped. Because he realized that the figure had already crossed the center line. He had left his 2 center-backs behind like wooden stakes, using his speed to leave them behind. It would be pointless for me to catch up now, no matter what. Now he can only pin his hopes on his own goalkeeper, Koble. Kober had already left the goal and rushed towards the rolling ball. At this point, the distance between the football and him and Lin Yi was roughly the same. And the football was still rolling toward him. Logically speaking, he should have been able to get involved with football first. That's why he dared to abandon the main gate and launch an attack. But just as he reached the middle of the race, he suddenly noticed that the Chinese boy was rapidly approaching the soccer ball. That speed was truly astonishing. Given the current situation, it seems I won't be able to receive the ball before the opponent. This made him very anxious. However, he had no other way out at this point. He could only grit his teeth and face the challenge head-on. They also adopted an intimidating posture, hoping to intimidate the other party. However, this is obviously of no use. Lin Yi took a few big strides forward and quickly got behind the ball, gaining control of it. Then he simply stretched out his foot and poked the ball past Cobra. At the same time, Lin Yi's body also swept past him like a gust of wind. Cobal's interception was only halfway done before Lin Yi's figure disappeared from his side. He turned around in a panic, only to see the other person's back as they chased after the football into the distance. After chasing for 2 steps, Cobal had no choice but to give up in despair. Because he realized that no matter how hard he tried, he could never catch up with the other person. After Lin Yi got past Cobra, the last line of defense, all he had to do was simple. He caught up with the ball, easily slotted it into the net. Wow! Son! You're awesome! Lin Jianghe, standing on the sidelines, was already excitedly gesturing wildly. Daniel, who was standing next to him, slapped his thigh in excitement. Great! Beautiful! Just like that. Ha! This is exactly what I needed. Thank you. Miss Hannah, thank you for sending me a genius. Daniel excitedly said to Hannah beside him. The impatience she had shown when she first met Lin Yi was completely gone. Hannah found it somewhat amusing to see him like that. It seems you're quite satisfied with the people you met this time. Of course, I'm very satisfied. My team is in dire need of a fast and aggressive striker. With that, Daniel waved his hand to stop the game. He beckoned Lin Yi over and said with a smile, "Kid, congratulations. You passed my tryout. If the physical exam goes smoothly, you can join my team." Upon hearing this, Lin Yi smiled. "Thank you, sir." Lin Yi thanked him very politely. "No need to thank me, it's your own skill that's earned you this position. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let you join my team." Daniel's eyes held appreciation. As he spoke, he beckoned to the team doctor standing nearby. "Wolf, take him for a physical exam." "Okay. Please follow me." Team Dr. Wolf beckoned Lin Yi over and led him to the medical examination room. At this point, there are actually no problems left. As long as Lin Yi doesn't have any hidden injuries or illnesses, he should be able to stay with the team. However, since things were not yet finalized, Lin Jianghe was still somewhat worried. He stood anxiously waiting outside the medical examination room. About an hour later, Lin Yi came out from inside. "How is it, son?" Lin Jianghe asked impatiently. "No problem." Lin Yi made a gesture to reassure his father. Lin Jianghe could no longer contain his joy and jumped up happily. At this moment, Wolf also handed Lin Yi's medical examination report to Daniel. "Mr. Daniel, the young Chinese man is perfectly healthy." Wolf report. "Great. It looks like my team will have a new member joining." Daniel sounded very excited. He turned to Lin Yi and said, "All right, now you can go with Miss Hannah to talk to Ricken about the contract." "Yes, sir." Lin Yi thanked Daniel and followed Hannah back to Ricken's office. Ricken had already received a message from Daniel. He was somewhat surprised that Lin Yi was able to move that stubborn old man, Daniel. When Lin Yi walked in from outside, led by Hannah, Ricken warmly invited the Lin family father and son to sit on the guest sofa. "Daniel has already told me about your situation. Congratulations. Young man, you passed the trial. Now let's talk about the contract." Ricken took out a pre-printed contract and handed it to Lin Yi, saying, "Since you don't have any reputation yet and aren't a European player, we can only offer you a D-level contract for now. Take a look at the contents of the contract." Lin Yi took the contract and glanced through it casually. Actually, there's not much to see. This D-level contract is the team's lowest tier contract, only slightly better than an apprenticeship contract. The contract stipulates that Lin Yi's weekly salary is €650, which adds up to more than €2,000 a month. The contract term is 5 years. As for the penalty for breach of contract, it is 500,000 euros. This penalty for breach of contract is obviously quite high compared to Lin Yi's salary. However, Lin Yi didn't seem to care much. He didn't say much about the salary and contract length. Although this wage is really low. However, he didn't intend to take this salary for long. If you perform well enough, the club will take the initiative to amend your contract. The contract also stipulated some bonuses and other similar items. For example, in an official match, a goal scored earns a bonus of 1,000 euros. An assist earns a bonus of 500 euros. He started the game and received a starting fee of 1,000 euros. A substitute appearance will cost 500 euros. These bonuses are what Lin Yi is more concerned about. Perhaps these sources of income will become the main source of my income in the future. With the help of translation software and Ricken's explanation, Lin Yi spent more than half an hour reading through the entire contract. After closing the contract, Lin Yi nodded to Ricken and said, "I have no more questions. We can sign now." Upon hearing Lin Yi's words, Ricken immediately smiled. "Okay, Lin, let's sign the contract now." As he spoke, Ricken asked Hannah to bring him 2 pens. The 2 people signed their names on the 2 contracts respectively. And so, Lin Yi officially became a player for Borussia Dortmund U23. Chapter 8, Rewards Received, Intensive Training Begins. Congratulations, host. You have completed the system task and signed a job contract within half a month. Reward, 1 golden treasure chest. Immediately after Lin Yi signed the contract, a system notification sounded in his mind. Lin Yi was overjoyed. The mission is finally complete. However, it wasn't time to open the treasure chest yet, so he had to hold back for now. On the other side, after signing the papers, Ricken stood up and shook hands with Lin Yi. "Lin, welcome to the Borussia Dortmund family. I hope we can work together successfully. It's a pleasure working with you." Lin Yi held Ricken's hand and said very solemnly. A day later, Borussia Dortmund's official website posted an inconspicuous message. The Borussia Dortmund U23 youth team has a new Chinese player, Lin Yi. The following is a brief introduction to Lin Yi. However, this news went unnoticed by anyone. Meanwhile, Lin Yi was at the airport seeing Lin Jianghe off. "Son, I'm heading back to China now. Do your best here. Show those foreigners how awesome we Chinese are." Lin Jianghe gave Lin Yi some reluctant instructions. "Don't worry, Dad. It won't be long before you see me competing on TV." Lin Yi said confidently. "Okay, I'll be waiting. Take care of yourself. I'm off." As Lin Jianghe spoke, he pulled his suitcase, turned around, and walked into the security checkpoint. Watching his father's receding figure, Lin Yi suddenly shouted, "Dad! When I make a fortune, I'll bring you here to enjoy a life of luxury." Lin Jianghe paused for a moment when he heard his son's shout, but he didn't turn around. He just waved to Lin Yi with his back to him and continued walking forward resolutely. But as he withdrew his hand, he seemed to unconsciously rub the corner of his eye. After seeing his father off, Lin Yi left the airport alone and took a taxi back to the dormitory that the club had prepared for the players. Dortmund's training conditions are quite good. Free singles accommodation was provided for players who did not have a place to live locally. In addition to the dormitory, the club will also help him with all the procedures required for playing football in Germany. Lin Yi doesn't need to worry about these things. After returning to his dormitory, Lin Yi brought up the system panel. On the virtual interface, a golden treasure chest lies quietly. Click to open. The treasure chest lid is opened. Congratulations, host. You have received the mission reward, fluency in a foreign language. Training points activated. Gain training immunity trait. Upon seeing the reward information that popped up after opening the treasure chest, Lin Yi was overjoyed. This system is really thoughtful, it knows what I need at this stage. These are both things I desperately need. Lin Yi was just worried about his language problem. When playing football abroad, communication is a major obstacle that hinders a player's development. Previously, he could only communicate with people by relying on translation software, resorting to guessing and gestures. Although they can manage to communicate, it is very difficult to have a smooth conversation. If we continue to rely on translation software in future training and learning, it will be very troublesome. So Lin Yi had already made up his mind to put in a lot of hard work to learn the language. But now, things are different. The system is directly rewarding those who are proficient in foreign languages. This means that in the future, he will be able to communicate without any problems not only in German, but also in English, Spanish, French, Italian, and other major European languages. This simply removed a major obstacle for him. In addition, there is this training to prevent injury. This is even more impressive. Players get injured either during a match or during training. Besides accidents, the main causes of training injuries are fatigue and excessive training volume. Now that I have training to prevent injury, doesn't that mean I can train whenever I want without worrying about getting hurt? In this situation, you can increase your daily training volume as much as possible. The amount of training directly affects the speed at which one's various abilities improve. Thinking of this, Lin Yi could no longer sit still. He got up, grabbed a soccer ball, and rushed out of the dormitory. He couldn't wait to test his abilities. It was already past 6 in the afternoon, and the team's daily training had long since ended. When Lin Yi arrived at the stadium, there were hardly any people left. He placed the soccer ball under his feet and began practicing juggling it. Bouncing the ball is a great exercise for players to get used to the ball and maintain their feel for it. Therefore, whether they are star players or newbies who have just started learning football, they must set aside a certain amount of time every day to practice this. Lin Yi's ball bouncing skills are only average, but he has received professional training since childhood, so his basic skills are solid. Basically, bouncing the ball hundreds of times in a row is not a problem. After practicing bouncing the ball for half an hour, Lin Yi began practicing his ball control. Without a benchmark, Lin Yi found a few pebbles and laid them out in order. Then, using these stones, they began to simulate pole spinning training. Pole swinging training is also one of the methods of basic training. This is mainly to train players' control of the ball and to better coordinate the player and the ball while dribbling. Lin Yi was extremely familiar with this exercise. So it's easy to do. However, this training may seem unremarkable, but it is extremely physically demanding. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. Lin Yi trained for more than an hour and his legs felt heavy, and he was drenched in sweat. After finishing the slalom training and resting for a while, Lin Yi started shooting practice again. However, he only had one soccer ball at that moment, and no one was there to fetch it for him. So he can't shoot at the goal, and in that case, he probably won't be able to shoot more than a few times in a whole night. His shooting training method was simple. He would find a house next to the field where equipment was stored, and use a piece of chalk he carried with him to draw 4 50-centimeter square areas on the outer wall of the house, representing the 4 corners of the goal. He then picked up a damaged dummy that was outside and placed it in front of the wall to act as a goalkeeper. Then, about 10 meters away from the wall, he began practicing shooting at the marked positions. Lin Yi's shooting skills are only passable, and he knows how to use a few shooting techniques. However, its accuracy is somewhat lacking. So during practice, about half of the shots could not hit the areas marked on the map. Sometimes they'll even knock down the mannequins in front of them. This forced him to frequently run over and help the mannequin up. Sometimes the ball goes off course, and he has to run a long way to retrieve it. But he showed no signs of discouragement, continuing tirelessly shooting, catching, shooting, and retrieving the ball. Repeat, repeat, and repeat again. And his body was quietly changing through this constant repetition of practice. However, these changes are very subtle and require gradual accumulation to show results. Before I knew it, the sky had turned completely dark. Lin Yi had to stop training. I checked the time, and it was already past 8 p.m. At this moment, he felt that his body was very tired. Strangely, although I was very tired, I didn't feel the soreness in my muscles and joints that I used to experience after high-intensity training. Lin Yi understood that this was probably due to the system's injury avoidance training. After assessing his remaining stamina, Lin Yi felt he could train a little longer. However, the lighting was insufficient at this time, so practicing shooting would be somewhat inappropriate. So he controlled the ball and started dribbling around the training field, using the light from the surrounding streetlights to practice his running with the ball. Chapter 9, The Head Coach's Attention, Diligence Will Pay Off. Inside the office building at Borussia Dortmund's youth training base, head coach Daniel is at his desk, summarizing the day's training and planning for tomorrow's session. This is a task that head coach must do every day. Just like a teacher has to prepare lessons every day. However, his workload was a little heavier today. This is because the team has a new player today. The thought of that somewhat thin young Chinese man filled Daniel with excitement. That lightning speed makes him a natural-born winger. He could already picture that kid standing on the third division pitch, wreaking havoc on the opponent's flanks. Especially when the opponent presses forward aggressively, leaving large gaps in the backcourt. That's when that kid will show off his skills. Although we haven't specifically tested how fast the other party is yet. However, based on his observations, at least in the entire league right now, there shouldn't be anyone faster than the other side. Given time, that kid will definitely become the nightmare of every team. Imagine a guy whose speed can tear through any defense in an instant, lurking menacingly on your back line. With just one through pass, he can leave all the defenders behind. Then he'll dart straight into the goal and deliver the decisive blow. In this situation, no opponent dares to push their lines out. If the formation can't push forward, then the support from the backfield to the front field will decrease. This will weaken the attack capability without being noticed. In other words, Lin Yi alone can become a powerful weapon to reduce the offensive power of the entire opposing team. This falls under the category of strategic nuclear deterrence on the battlefield. How could Daniel not be excited? The addition of such a player presents a new challenge to his team's lineup. The old tactics definitely need to be changed. We must bring out the opponent's maximum effectiveness. So what he was thinking about at that moment was how to change the formation to better bring out the kid's strengths. Adjusting a team's tactics is a complex task that involves many factors. This significantly increased his workload as head coach. So he inevitably had to work overtime today. I worked at my desk until after 7 p.m., when it was already getting dark outside. He then stopped. I stretched and rubbed my aching lower back. I picked up the water glass next to me and took a sip. As he got older, he felt increasingly powerless. Sometimes I really envy those young guys on the sports field. There's always an inexhaustible supply of energy. He himself can only soak goji berries in a thermos now, and his back aches and pains after working for a while. He can barely take care of his wife anymore. Just as Daniel was lost in thought, he suddenly heard the sound of a football hitting the wall outside the window. Daniel looked at the sky and felt something was off. Who's still playing football so late? I stood up, walked to the window, and opened it. Following the sound, Daniel saw the figure kicking a ball in front of a wall. Watching the opponent kick the ball against the wall again and again, then stretch out their foot to catch the rebounding ball, and then kick it out again. Sometimes the soccer ball would bounce off the wall, and he would have to run over to retrieve it before continuing to kick it against the wall. Time and time again, like a tireless machine. Even from this distance, Daniel could see the sweat beading on the other player's body, soaking through his entire jersey. However, the opposing team didn't care at all and continued to practice shooting. Daniel stood by the window for a long time, until it was completely dark. The figure then stopped. Just when he thought the other person would leave, he saw that after resting for a few minutes, the other person controlled the football under their feet and started practicing dribbling around the field. Looking at the somewhat blurry figure under the streetlight, Daniel nodded unconsciously. What a hard-working kid. As the team's head coach, he naturally appreciates hard-working players. In his view, for a player to achieve success in a professional game, in addition to their talent, the most important thing is whether they are hard-working enough. And now we see Lin Yi working so hard even though he just joined the team. This made him have a much better impression of the other person. At the same time, he also gained a little more confidence in his new tactics. Lin Yi returned to his dormitory after training at around 9 p.m. At this moment, he was soaked in sweat and had little strength left. However, I didn't experience much physical discomfort. If this had happened in the past, Lin Yi probably would have collapsed on his bed by now. Now, I just feel weak, but I can still move around. This gave him a deeper understanding of the system's functions. The system's injury prevention function should be able to avoid the injuries that exercise can cause to one's body through some means. However, one cannot allow one's physical strength to be depleted. If you overdo it, you'll still feel tired and lack energy. At this point, even if you want to continue training, you can't. At that moment, he felt his stomach rumble loudly. Although he had already eaten dinner, he had exhausted himself during the exercise. Fortunately, he was prepared. I took out the whole wheat bread that I had taken from the cafeteria for dinner today from the drawer. I poured myself another glass of water. They started eating heartily. After finishing a large loaf of bread, I finally felt much better. Only then did he have time to check his system. He brought up the system panel and found that in addition to the original information, there was another piece of information. Training value. 3 after the training value. Below the training value, there is another item, training points. After the integral, the number is 0, and after the 0 there is a parenthesis, inside which is the number 3/20. Lin Yi thought for a moment and understood that the number after the training value should be his training time, with 1 hour corresponding to 1 training value. The 3 out of 20 after the score should mean that 20 training points are exchanged for 1 score. I've trained for 3 hours and gained 3 training points. To earn points, you need to train for another 17 hours. Thinking of this, Lin Yi couldn't help but purse his lips. This system is so stingy, it takes 20 hours of training to earn just 1 point. This might require 2 days of training. That would be great if we could earn 1 point for every hour of training. In that case, I estimate that I can become a master of all technical skills in less than a year. Flowers, beautiful women, money, and all kinds of championship honors will come true. All the major wealthy families will be vying for it. And I will become a greater figure than any great star in history. By then, what about the Champions League, the top 5 league titles, the World Cup? Forget about that. In short, he won all sorts of championship titles. As Lin Yi pondered this, drool unconsciously trickled from the corner of his mouth. However, he soon woke up from his dream. Given the system's nature, it certainly won't let itself achieve those goals so easily. It seems that the only way forward is to train diligently. Thinking about all these random thoughts, Lin Yi quickly drifted off to sleep. In his dream, he seemed to see a future filled with flowers and honor. A smile unconsciously crept onto his lips. Chapter 10, the first team training session, let me compare him. The next day was the day Lin Yi officially joined the team. When Lin Yi was on trial, most of the Dortmund U23 players had already met him. Moreover, everyone was deeply impressed by this incredibly fast Chinese boy. So when Daniel formally introduced Lin Yi to the team, most of the players greeted him with friendly smiles. There was only one exception. That was the team's forward, the German black player known as Black Lightning Moukoko. He was the one who felt most threatened by Lin Yi's arrival. Because Lin Yi's technical characteristics are so similar to his. Both are speed-oriented forwards, and they play the same position, left winger. Moreover, Lin Yi's performance during the trial training was truly amazing. In this way, the moment the other party joined the team, they immediately posed a huge threat to him. Therefore, he was very wary of Lin Yi's arrival. When Lin Yi took the initiative to shake hands with him, he kept a straight face and released his hand after only a light touch. Lin Yi seemed to sense that the young black man in front of him was somewhat hostile towards him. He simply didn't know why the other person was acting this way. However, he didn't pay much attention to this hostility. In a group, you can't make everyone like you. Especially in highly competitive groups like football teams. In addition to being teammates, the players also have a competitive relationship with each other. 11 people who can play. A team, however, can have as many as 20 or 30 members. With so many people competing for those 11 spots, the relationships between the players become quite delicate. Especially for players in the same position, the relationship between them becomes even more delicate. Lin Yi, having also been involved in professional football, naturally has a clear understanding of this point. He knew what was going on just by looking at Moukoko's attitude. Therefore, he also did not continue to show goodwill towards the other party. You're not convinced? Well, just you wait, I'll beat you until you submit. In professional football, strength reigns supreme. If you have real ability, I'll respect you. If you're not capable enough, then I'm sorry, but I won't accept your seniority. Lin Yi's smile vanished, and his expression turned serious. The other players also seemed to sense that the atmosphere between the two was a bit off. However, no one found it strange. Because this kind of thing happens all the time in the team. Head coach Daniel didn't seem to care either. He even felt a little excited. Before Lin Yi arrived, Mokoko was the fastest player on the team. On the left flank, his breakthroughs were incredibly sharp. He is the team's leading scorer. This inevitably made the other party quite arrogant. Sometimes, even when he, the head coach, speaks, the other party dares to contradict him. This greatly displeased Daniel. However, for the sake of the team's performance, he sometimes had to endure it. But now things are better. The team has acquired another fast winger. If you, Mokoko, dare to continue your previous disrespectful attitude, don't blame me for replacing you. After introducing Lin Yi to the team, Daniel announced the start of a day's training. This was during the preseason training period before the start of the league. The main training content is aimed at restoring the player's physical fitness. Therefore, the strength and conditioning coach becomes the busiest person as soon as training begins. Lin Yi was called aside by assistant coach Brandt at this moment. Lin, I need to conduct a professional test on your various abilities. Go warm up for 10 minutes first, then come find me. Lin Yi agreed and then turned around and ran to the side to warm up. 10 minutes later, Lin Yi, who was already sweating slightly, came to Brandt's side again. Sir, I'm ready. Very good. Our tests today will cover speed, strength, endurance, and jumping ability. Brandt explained the content of today's test to Lin Yi. The first test item was jumping. This test is very simple, it mainly depends on how high Lin Yi can jump. Lin Yi's final score was 79 centimeters. This is a pretty good result. Among football players, they are already ranked in the upper middle range. After the jumping test, we started testing strength. The strength test is conducted in 3 parts. These are upper body strength, lower body strength, and core strength. The main test for upper limb strength is to look at his bench press data. Lower limb strength is tested using a lying leg press machine. As for the core strength, it's simple, just see how long his tablet support can last. The final results showed that his bench press weight was 195 pounds and his lower body strength was 355 pounds. He also held the plank position for about half an hour. Brandt was fairly satisfied with the result. Although his bench press strength isn't exceptionally high, it's considered average within the team. Their lower body strength ranks among the top 3 in the team. Furthermore, their core strength is even more formidable, making them stand out among the team members. The team's previous record for plank support was 25 minutes. Lin Yi has now broken this record. Upon seeing this data, Brandt, who was standing next to him, couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Wow! I didn't know you had such a great back. Your future girlfriend is so lucky. His words immediately drew laughter from his teammates who had come over to watch the commotion. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. Lin Yi didn't take the joke seriously. They even had the mood to crack a couple of jokes. He is now fluent in German and has no problem communicating with others. This also gave his teammates and coaches a very good impression. In fact, many Chinese players who played abroad in the past failed to achieve success not only because of their own skills and personal efforts, but also because of language barriers. Just think about it, when you're on the team, you're always completely clueless when other people say something. Over time, no one will want to communicate with you anymore. In order to improve your skills, in addition to your own efforts, frequent communication with coaches and teammates is also a very important part. Most international players who achieve success have overcome the language barrier. Of course, if you're a prodigy like Messi or Ronaldo, that's a different story. Now Lin Yi can communicate with others without any problems, which puts him ahead of many others. After testing his strength, Brandt let Lin Yi rest for about 10 minutes to recover his energy. Then the third test, the speed test, began. The first test was at a speed of 30 meters. In football, 30-meter sprint speed is much more important than 100-meter sprint speed. After all, a football field is only about 100 meters long. In a race, it's rare to see a player sprint from one side to the other. More often, it's a short sprint of 20 or 30 meters. Sometimes the sprint distance is only a few meters or a dozen meters. Therefore, this 30-meter sprint speed is the standard for testing whether a player is a fast horse. Lin Yi was ready to start at the starting line, just waiting for Brandt's command to charge off. But just then, a voice suddenly rang out from the crowd of onlookers. "Coach, can I run with him for a bit? I feel like my speed has improved recently. How about I race this Chinese kid and see who runs faster?" Chapter 11 Speed Race, Team's Fastest Record. Hearing the voice, everyone turned to look and saw that the speaker was Makoko, the team's undisputed fastest black player. Brandt glanced at the other person, thought for a moment, and then nodded and said, "Okay, then you can come along." "Thank you, coach." A flicker of excitement crossed Makoko's eyes. She walked over to Lin Yi's side. At that moment, a voice suddenly reached Lin Yi's ears. "Kid, you'd better run with some effort later, or I'll leave you too far behind." Upon hearing what the other person said, Lin Yi was immediately taken aback. Is this guy trying to provoke himself? I'll say the same thing to you. Don't cry if you lose later. Lin Yi retorted sharply. Upon hearing Lin Yi's words, a hint of anger appeared on Mu Keek's face. However, he managed to control himself and gritted his teeth, saying, "Good lad, I hope you can still be arrogant later." "I'll always be arrogant. But you might not be." Lin Yi continued to retort. "You." Makoko was furious at being insulted, and just as he was about to continue his sarcastic remarks, Brandt next to him whistled. "Attention! Get ready!" Brandt raised his right hand high, gesturing for the two to prepare. Makoko could only swallow back the words she was about to say, glared fiercely at Lin Yi, walked to the starting line, and prepared to sprint. Lin Yi didn't care about the other person's gaze at all. He walked to the starting line and prepared to sprint. "Ready, run." Seeing that the two were ready, Brandt suddenly swung his arm down. As his arm fell, the two figures rushed out almost simultaneously. As a black player, Makoko's explosiveness is astonishing. The moment Brandt issued the order, he darted out like a cheetah. As soon as he started running, he felt that he was in good shape for the day. At the current pace, I am very likely to break my own previous fastest record. This made him secretly delighted. If I can break my own previous records, then that Chinese person will never be able to catch up with me. Once I win, I must give my opponent a good dressing down. What kind of lousy Chinese players are they? How could they let the other side act arrogantly in front of them? Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly felt a strong gust of wind pass by his side. Then a dark shadow swiftly swept past him. What is that? Makoko's heart tightened immediately. A fleeting glance out of the corner of his eye instantly threw him into a state of turmoil. The Chinese boy who had just been left behind had somehow overtaken him. Moreover, the opponent's speed is getting faster and faster. In a mere instant, they had already left him 2 body lengths behind. Makoko was immediately filled with anxiety. He quickly stomped his feet on the ground, increasing his speed to the maximum, and chased after the other person. To his despair, no matter how fast he sped up, he couldn't close the distance between them even a fraction of an inch. The figure was getting further and further away from him. By the time that figure crossed the finish line, the distance between them had increased to more than 2 meters. 3.5 seconds. Oh my God! Unbelievable! Makoko, your time is 3.91 seconds. Not bad, that's an improvement of 0.05 seconds over your previous time. Brandt quickly reported the two scores. Upon hearing Lin Yi's results, a collective gasp rippled through the surrounding crowd. Holy crap! Did I hear that right? A 30-meter dash in under 3.77 seconds. If I'm not mistaken, the world record is 3.75 seconds, right? That's incredible. Unbelievable. This must be a new record for the Dortmund team. No, it should be a new record for the entire league. Makoko looks like a frail old man in front of this Chinese kid. It's ridiculous. Now he should know how much worse he is than others, right? I really don't know where he got the courage to challenge that Chinese kid. Listening to the chatter of those around me, Mokoko's dark face became even uglier. Although he had just broken his own best record, he couldn't be happy no matter what. Seeing Lin Yi's calm smile beside him, he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. He walked up to Lin Yi and said coldly, "Do you dare to race me in the 100 meters again?" "I refuse." Lin Yi said it very frankly. In his opinion, this kind of competition was very boring. Moreover, he did not consider the other party to be his opponent. There's absolutely no sense of accomplishment in playing against opponents like that. Are you a coward? Upon hearing Lin Yi's refusal, Mukiki was momentarily stunned, but quickly became even angrier. In his view, the other party was just cowardly and dared not compete with him. You know, he used to be a sprinter. His forte is the 100-meter dash. In the 30-meter race, he admitted that he might not be as fast as his opponent. But when it comes to the 100-meter dash, he really isn't afraid of anyone. It's important to understand that a 100-meter race and a 30-meter race are completely different concepts. The 30-meter dash tests a person's explosive power. As long as you can react quickly enough at the start and have enough explosive power, your result won't be too bad. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. The 100-meter dash not only tests an athlete's explosive power in a short time, but also their ability to accelerate and sustain in the second half of the race. Many sprint stars are not particularly outstanding in the first half of the race, but they win countless honors because of their strong acceleration and endurance in the second half. For example, Usain Bolt, the world's #1 sprinter, is such an example. His performance at the start was only average, often ranking in the middle or lower half of the race. However, in the second half, he was able to use his acceleration and endurance to overtake his opponents and win the championship. Mokoko considers herself to belong to this type as well. Although in the first half, his explosive power may not be as great as Lin Yi's. However, in the second half of the race, he was confident that he could completely leave his opponent behind by relying on his continuous acceleration. That's why he proposed a 100-meter race with Lin Yi. But now Lin Yi has backed down. This immediately enraged him. They started mocking Lin Yi, calling him a coward who didn't dare to compete with him. Lin Yi wasn't bothered by the provocation. Instead, he looked at the other person and said, "I don't think there's any point in this competition. Even if I win, I won't gain anything. Why bother? I'll bet you 5,000 euros. If you win, the money is yours. If you lose, you pay up 5,000 euros. How about it? Are you in?" Mokoko stared intently at Lin Yi, gritting her teeth as she spoke. A commotion immediately erupted around them. It's important to know that these U23 players don't earn much. 5,000 euros is enough for a player to earn for 1 or 2 months. Therefore, Mokoko's bet of 5,000 euros is already quite a large one. Okay. That's more like it. 5,000 it is. I'll bet on it. A hint of joy flashed in Lin Yi's eyes, and he immediately agreed. Chapter 12 I bet 5,000 yuan. Okay, thank you. I won't be polite. Upon hearing Lin Yi's agreement, Mukik's lips curled into a mocking smile. Kid. You'll be crying later. Brandt, standing nearby, frowned when he saw his two players actually betting on each other. I wanted to speak up and stop it. But just then, a hand patted him on the shoulder. Brandt turned around and saw that it was the team's head coach, Daniel. Ignore them. Let them compete. Daniel said with a chuckle. Fine. You're the boss, you're in charge. Brandt had no choice but to agree. Meanwhile, the surrounding crowd of players who were watching the spectacle also became excited because of this betting game. Some people have even started betting on who will win and who will lose. This caused some chaos at the scene. Then Brandt coughed twice loudly. The scene immediately fell silent. If you're ready, then begin. Brandt issued the order. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi and Mukiki stepped forward and prepared to start the race at the starting line. Ready, run. At Brandt's command, two figures immediately darted out. As soon as the race started, Lin Yi took a few big strides and overtook Makoko, sprinting towards the finish line in the lead. Makoko, behind Lin Yi, was also gritting her teeth and running wildly. He stared at the figure in front of him, constantly encouraging himself. Run! You'll regret this later. Makoko was already fantasizing about how he would crush his opponent in the second half of the race. Soon, the two had run more than 50 meters. At this point, the gap between the two sides had widened to about 3 meters. Now. With a determined look in his mind, Makoko pushed off again, preparing to accelerate in the second half of the race. However, he was soon dumbfounded. Why is the distance between me and the figure in front of me not getting closer, but instead getting farther and farther? This discovery immediately made him very anxious. With another burst of power, he stomped on his running shoes until they were practically smoking. But all his efforts were in vain. The figure in front of him was gradually getting further and further away. By the time Lin Yi crossed the finish line, the distance between them had increased to more than 4 meters. 10 seconds and 1 second. Oh my God! You should be training for sprinting. Not playing football here. Brandt looked at the numbers on his stopwatch and exclaimed in surprise. Upon hearing his exclamation, gasps of surprise rippled through the surrounding crowd. This guy must have been a professional sprinter. That speed is incredible. The world record is 9.58 seconds, but that takes a lot of training. This guy is only 17. With a few more years of professional training, he might actually break that record. What was that Makoko thinking? Racing against a monster like that. Does he think he's Usain Bolt? Ha! He spent 5,000 yuan and got this result. How pathetic. After losing 5,000 yuan, that guy probably won't be able to go out and find women for several months. I'm really worried he'll go crazy from being so pent up. To be honest, Makoko is fast enough, 10 seconds 4 or 5, but he's no match for the Chinese kid. Hearing the murmurs in the crowd, Makoko, who had just crossed the finish line and slumped to the ground, looked extremely displeased. What upset him even more was that at that moment, Lin Yi walked up to him, smiling, and said, "Kid. Don't forget my 5,000 euros. Thanks. You." Looking at that hateful smiling face in front of him, Makoko really wanted to punch it. However, after some hesitation, he said blankly, "Don't worry. I'll give it to you." That's good. Lin Yi didn't care about the other party's attitude at all. Then he turned to his teammates and said, "Once I get the money, I'll treat everyone to drinks." Upon hearing Lin Yi's words, the surrounding players immediately erupted in cheers. That's great. You're so generous, Chinese kid. I like you. Then we'll be waiting. Hey you, hurry up and pay back the money you lost. Don't keep us from going for drinks. Yes, how about tonight? I can't wait. Listening to what the people around her were saying, Makoko, who was already feeling very frustrated, was on the verge of exploding with pent-up frustration. This Chinese kid is absolutely despicable. By doing this, he made it impossible for himself to renege on his debt. Unless you risk offending everyone. Otherwise, they will have no choice but to comply. Thinking about it this way, Makoko felt waves of pain in her heart. 5,000 euros. My monthly salary is only a little over 4,000 euros. That's more than a month's salary for me. I must have been incredibly unlucky. Why bother racing with that kid? At that moment, he truly felt some regret. Unfortunately, there's no going back in life, so he had no choice but to swallow his pride and bear it. What's there to be proud of? Being fast isn't anything special. Football isn't just about speed. Otherwise, wouldn't all teams just recruit track and field athletes? In the end, it's all about ability. Makoko comforted herself in this way. They completely forgot that they also relied on speed to eat. At that moment, Brandt blew the whistle in his mouth. This drew everyone's attention. The last test is a physical fitness test. Anyone else want to participate? As he spoke, his eyes swept across the crowd. All the players immediately shrank back, and no one dared to utter a sound. Physical fitness tests require you to be crazy to even participate. Since no one wants to compete, then go back to training. Brandt's face hardened, and he roared. Upon hearing the coach's roar, the previously excited crowd immediately dispersed. Even Makoko, who had just looked dejected, now fled as if avoiding a plague. Seeing the crowd scatter like birds and beasts, Lin Yi couldn't help but grin. It's just a physical fitness test, is it really necessary? However, he soon realized that it really was that serious. Now, run around the track at your most comfortable pace for 12 minutes. I want to see how far you can run. Brandt told Lin Yi about the physical fitness test items. It's a 12-minute run. As the name suggests, it's about seeing how far an athlete can run in 12 minutes. The farther you run, the better your physical fitness will be. Of course, there is generally a standard for football players, and falling below this standard is equivalent to failing. This tactic was also commonly used by Lin Yi's team when he was playing domestically. So it's not unfamiliar. However, just because someone is familiar with something doesn't mean he likes it. On the contrary, he abhorred this testing method. Because although it's only a short 12 minutes, it's quite a test of one's physical strength. Because this is not like running 3 or 5,000 meters, where there is a clear distance goal. It's easier to run like that. However, this 12-minute run does not have a fixed finish line. It means running until time runs out or you can't run anymore. In this process, because there is a minimum score as the red line, you dare not slow down. We can only keep running in a single-minded direction. This places very high demands on physical fitness. It's safe to say that no football player would like this sport. That's why all the players who were watching ran away as soon as they heard about the physical fitness test. They don't want to be abused. Chapter 13, Silent Training, Striving for that slim chance of getting a spot on the board. Lin Yi sighed and could only walk over helplessly to complete the most difficult 12-minute run. By the time he finished the 12-minute run, Lin Yi was completely soaked in sweat and breathless. However, the final result was acceptable. He ran a total of 3,500 meters in 12 minutes. This performance would be considered average within the team. After all the tests were completed, Brandt compiled the results and handed them over to head coach Daniel. Daniel took the results, glanced at them, nodded, and didn't show much expression on his face. However, he was very satisfied. Actually, his other achievements were just average and not particularly outstanding. The main thing was Lin Yi's speed, which was truly exceptional. This speed is something Daniel has never seen in his decades-long coaching career. Now he's just glad the other person didn't go to practice track and field. If the other person were to train in track and field, they would definitely become a world-class athlete. But that wouldn't do him any good. Let's test his ball handling skills again. Daniel continued giving instructions. Okay. Brandt agreed and walked toward Lin Yi, who had just recovered. Over the next period of time, Lin Yi conducted tests on passing, shooting, heading, free kicks, dribbling, and ball control. When the test results were presented to Daniel, there was no surprise this time. In his opinion, Lin Yi's ball skills are not a problem in the German third division, but he needs to put in more effort if he wants to develop in a higher-level league. Lin, your test is over. To be honest, apart from your speed which amazed me, there wasn't anything particularly impressive about your other qualities. If you want to play in a higher league in the future, you need to work harder now. And since you're not a European player, you might need to put in more effort than others. So I will be very strict with you in the training that follows. If you can't handle it, then it's best to give up now. Daniel called Lin Yi over and began to give him a pep talk. Please rest assured. I will do my best. I will definitely achieve the results that satisfy you in the shortest possible time. Lin Yi made his own safeguards. Very good. Now let's go train. Daniel waved his hand, shooing Lin Yi to the training ground. In the following days, Lin Yi gradually integrated into the team and trained with them. In addition to the team's regular training, he would set aside 2 hours every morning and evening for extra training. In addition to the 6 hours of regular daily training, his daily training time is generally around 10 hours. If an ordinary person trained like that, they would have been ruined long ago. However, Lin Yi has been trained to avoid injury. At most, he will feel that his physical strength is completely depleted, but he will not be injured. Basically, you can replenish your energy after a good night's sleep. This can be considered a cheat code given to him by the system. Head coach Daniel was initially somewhat worried about Lin Yi's relentless training. Because the human body has a limit to its tolerance. If this limit is exceeded, then the training will be harmful to the body. He specifically sought out Lin Yi to express his concerns. Lin Yi did not refute Daniel's concerns, but he still insisted on doing extra training every day afterward. This left Daniel somewhat helpless. However, after a few days, upon discovering that Lin Yi did not seem to be affected by the extra training, they stopped paying attention to the matter. This also gave him a new understanding of Lin Yi's physical fitness. At the same time, he was even more fond of Lin Yi, who was so diligent. At the same time, Lin Yi quickly began to get along well with his teammates. 5,000 euros that Makoko lost to Lin Yi played a significant role in this. The day after the bet was made, Makoko, looking constipated, gave Lin Yi 5,000 euros. Then Lin Yi treated all his teammates to drinks at a bar. Then his 5,000 euros were reduced to just a few dozen euros. This made Lin Yi sigh. The cost of living in Germany is really damn high. However, after this treat, the team members quickly accepted the Chinese man. Apart from Makoko, the guy who paid for it. Now, whenever he sees Lin Yi on the training field, he always gives him a cold look and doesn't show any kindness. However, Lin Yi did not tolerate the other party. If you ignore me, I'm even less inclined to bother with you. Just don't mess with me. If you dare to challenge me, then I'm sorry, I'll definitely show you why flowers are so red. The tension between the two was also observed by the others. However, this situation is common in teams. We were all hot-blooded young men, and each of us had a very bad temper. Inevitably, there will be some unpleasantness. As long as it doesn't escalate to physical violence, there's no need to interfere. So his teammates didn't pay much attention to it. Time passed quietly amidst this intense training. More than a week has passed in the blink of an eye. The various leagues that everyone is looking forward to are also quietly approaching. The most eye-catching events are undoubtedly the top-level competitions of the 5 major leagues. After nearly 3 months of summer vacation without any league matches, fans who have been waiting for this game to start are eagerly anticipating the reopening of the major leagues. Since Borussia Dortmund's first team won the Bundesliga title last season, they have become one of the focal points of attention for many fans this season. Before the league's opening match, major media outlets in Dortmund and even throughout Germany began publishing numerous news reports about the Dortmund first team. News reports cover team training and preparation, individual player lifestyles and training, and even the family members of the first team stars occasionally appear in newspapers and on television. It can be said that this is a good warm-up for the upcoming Bundesliga season. As for Borussia Dortmund's U23 team, which serves as the defending champions' reserve team, it presents a different picture. Aside from die-hard Borussia Dortmund fans or family members who play for the team, not many people would pay attention to this place. There won't be large crowds of fans waiting for autographs around the team's training facility. There won't be any pretty girls holding signs and flags screaming outside the railings. Of course, there won't be any media reporters holding cameras, ready to pounce on a player at any moment and grab them for an interview. Here, all that exists is the daily routine of training, whistles, shouts, the thud of the ball, and the players' cries. Compared to the bustling first-team training base, this place is like a forgotten corner. The people here can only silently give their all, striving for that slim chance of getting ahead. The league is the best stage for players to fight for a chance to stand out. Chapter 14, the Third Division, kicks off, entering the final list. Monday, August 1, 2011. Borussia Dortmund U23 training ground. Before the start of a formal day of training, the players gathered together to listen to the head coach's instructions. This weekend is the opening day of the league. I'm sure you've all seen the various news articles in the newspapers about the opening of the major leagues and the big stars. How are you feeling? Aren't you envious? Don't you also want to be the main character in that story? However, I must tell you, unfortunately, you are not yet able to obtain that kind of treatment. Because, you are not worthy. Daniel emphasized the word unworthy when he said it. As he spoke, he scanned each person in the group with his eyes. Seeing the expressions of frustration, disappointment, and even anger appear on many people's faces, he couldn't help but smile slightly. If I say you are not worthy, you may disagree, or even resent me. But it's okay, because I'm just stating a fact. Because the league you're in is called the German Third Division, which is the third tier of football in Germany. Above you are the Second Division and the Bundesliga. Those fans will only focus on these two leagues. They only have eyes for the stars who shine on the court, not for you guys. At this point, Daniel paused for a moment before continuing. If you want to get that kind of treatment, there's only one way: get promoted to the first team as soon as possible. To get promoted to the first team, you first have to perform well in this team and get more attention for yourself. And now, an opportunity is presented to you. That's the German Third Division, which is about to start but doesn't get much attention. You might be wondering, how can a match that doesn't get much attention become an opportunity? Because ordinary fans don't pay attention, but the scouts and coaches of the first team will take a look from time to time. And these are the people who decide whether you make it into the first team. So for the rest of the season, I want you to remember this at all times. The 3. Liga is the best stage to determine whether you can make it into the first team and become stars in the public eye. And this weekend, the stage will open. We will face our first league opponent, Regensburg. And the players who will be playing in the weekend's matches are all on my list. As Daniel spoke, he took a piece of white paper covered with writing from his pocket. Upon seeing this piece of paper, the players standing below immediately brightened up. They knew that was the full roster of players participating in tomorrow's game. Making the roster means there's a high chance of playing for Borussia Dortmund U23. They listened carefully to what the head coach had just said. What they said is right. If you want to stand out, you have to perform well in the German Third Division first. This is the only way to have a chance of being promoted to the first team or being scouted by other higher-level teams. To perform well in the league, you first need to make the match roster. If you can't even make the top list, how can you talk about hammer success? So at this moment, everyone began to watch the head coach with tension, and their ears quietly perked up. Seeing that everyone's attention was focused, Daniel slowly began to speak. Now I will announce the names of those who will be included in tomorrow's competition roster. Those whose names are called, please stand to my left. Kobel. The first name Daniel called out was the team's starting goalkeeper, Kobel. The tall Kobel, with a faint smile on his face, stepped out of the line and stood to Daniel's left. Unbelian. Hitz. Zagadou. As Daniel called out a name, the player whose name was called would step out from the team and stand to his left. Soon, more than a dozen players stood to his left. Mukoko. Daniel shouted. Upon hearing Daniel call his name, Mukoko immediately grinned. At the same time, he didn't forget to give Lin Yi, who was still standing in the line, a provocative look. He doesn't think the other side will be able to make the final roster today. I must give them a good taunt later. Maybe it will make the other party lose all their strength. Oh my. Just thinking about that feeling is wonderful. Mukoko. What the hell are you doing? Don't you want to be on the list? If so, I'll cross your name off right now. Just as Mukoko was lost in his imagination, Daniel's angry voice abruptly pulled him back to reality. He hurriedly stepped out of the line and stood in the line to Daniel's left. Daniel glared at him fiercely, said nothing more, and then continued to pronounce the names. Soon, the list of 18 people was reduced to just one person. Before calling out the last name, Daniel looked up and glanced at the remaining players on the team. Everyone looked tense at this moment. Because this is the last chance. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. If your name doesn't appear on the list, it means you're likely to miss the entire season. Once the main list is finalized, there will only be minor adjustments, but most of the personnel will remain fixed. It will be extremely difficult to get into this big list again later. Therefore, everyone wanted to get that last spot. Daniel's gaze finally settled on Lin Yi's face. To his surprise, the Chinese boy had a calm expression on his face. Clearly, he wasn't as nervous as the others about this last spot. Daniel didn't know if the other person was pretending on purpose. In reality, he was already panicking. However, he still admired this composure. Forest. Daniel finally uttered the last name. Upon hearing this name, the other players who were not selected immediately let out a sigh of despair. Lin Yi, on the other hand, calmly stepped forward and entered the group to the left of Daniel. Makoko, who had just been looking smug, suddenly turned pale. This guy is really persistent. At this moment, the joy that Makoko had felt when she entered the final list had completely vanished. All that's left is resentment. However, he quickly calmed down again. Making it onto the roster doesn't mean you'll get to play. You'll be sitting on the bench for 90 minutes. Let's see if you're still so smug then. Makoko thought bitterly to herself. Chapter 15 shows significant improvement, as evidenced by the coach's evaluation. After announcing the roster, Daniel waved for the assistant coaches to begin joint training. From now until the start of the game, the team will mainly focus on training the players' teamwork and practicing various tactics. Lin Yi has accumulated more than 100 training points in the past few days. These training points can now be exchanged for 5 points. Before training, he put all those points into passing and receiving. Changed from 61 to 66. The bonus effect of 5 points is quite noticeable. During today's team practice, he clearly felt that he was becoming more and more adept at passing and receiving the ball. During the training matches, he was still representing the B team, which was the substitute team. Compared to Team A, which represents the main players, Team B consists mostly of substitute players who can't even make the final roster. Therefore, their strength is much weaker than Team A. In previous training matches, Team B had mostly lost more than they had won. However, in today's game, Lin Yi, as the winger of Team B, caused Team A a lot of trouble. Right at the start of the match, Team B took advantage of an offside trap, with Lin Yi making a quick run down the wing and then crossing the ball directly. Lin Yi's cross was very accurate. The B team's center forward, who was following up in the middle, only needed to jump slightly in place, and the ball flew over his head. With just a flick of his head, the ball easily flew into the corner of Kobal's goal. That was a good pass. As the ball went into the goal, Daniel, who was watching from the sidelines, nodded in approval. That Chinese kid seems to have improved his passing. I remember a few days ago, his passing didn't seem this accurate. Brandt, who was standing next to him, was also somewhat surprised. One ball doesn't mean anything, let's observe more. Daniel said. A dozen minutes later, Lin Yi once again found a good opportunity to break through on the wing. He received a long pass from the B team's defensive midfielder, which came from the backfield. This time, he sprinted the ball with great force, sending it several meters away. Then, relying on his speed advantage, he overtook the A team's fullback who was coming up to defend him from the outside. After finally breaking into the penalty area, he took a shot. However, this time his shot was too angled, and the ball hit the outside of the goalpost and bounced away. Although the ball didn't go in, it still drew gasps of surprise from the teammates around him. However, Lin Yi was somewhat depressed. His shooting technique is still somewhat lacking. If a player has good shooting skills, it's simply impossible for them to miss in that situation. It is clear that there are still many areas where I need to improve. Lin's breakthrough was truly sharp, but unfortunately, he was still a little short of the final touch. Brandt commented with a smile. He has great talent, but unfortunately his playing habits weren't disciplined enough. He needs to practice more in the future. However, he's a bit too old now. If he had trained in our youth academy from a young age, he would probably be playing for the first team by now. There was a hint of regret in Daniel's tone. What he said was true. Most of the football stars who achieve success in the world are those who have received professional training since they were very young. Although Lin Yi also received training as a child, he grew up in the environment of China. The youth training system in China is incomplete. Many professional coaches are actually not professional. Under the tutelage of these football coaches, many of whom were themselves incompetent, many of his habits were actually irregular. As people get older, these bad habits tend to accumulate. It was something he could never change once he grew up. Lin Yi is currently in a stage where he is about to take shape, but is not yet fully formed. Many of his habits have accumulated, but they haven't yet become fixed. At this point, trying to make a change is difficult, but there is still some hope. This is why many players reach their peak performance around the age of 17 or 18. If he can get rid of some accumulated bad habits during this stage and receive more professional and correct guidance and training, his skills will improve rapidly. If this stage is missed, then the person will basically not make much progress. While this stage can correct bad habits, it can never match the future potential of players who have received professional training from a young age. This is also what Daniel regrets. In his view, even if Lin Yi tries hard to change, the height he can reach in the future is not very high. At most, he can only be a starting player in an ordinary team in the top league or a substitute in a big club. If one relaxes even slightly, one might not even be able to reach this height. Of course, even so, Lin Yi is already considered extremely outstanding. After all, many people spend their whole lives striving for this level but never reach it. So from this perspective, he still admires Lin Yi. At this moment, Lin Yi, who was working hard on the field, probably did not expect that the head coach on the sidelines had already made a prediction about his future. If he knew, he would definitely think to himself, I have a system. How could I possibly be content with just being a substitute for a wealthy family? After a day of grueling training, Lin Yi, as usual, completed his 2-hour extra training session. Only then did he return to his dormitory. He rummaged through the cabinet and found his phone. He dialed Lin Jianhe's number and called him directly. The phone rang a few times before being answered. Lin Jianhe's cheerful voice came through the phone. Son, how have you been lately? Have you missed your old man? Upon hearing his father's voice, Lin Yi's nose suddenly tingled, and he almost burst into tears. However, he quickly regained his composure and said in a very excited voice, Dad, I have great news for you. I've made the team's roster. I might even play in the league this weekend. Wow! That's awesome. Lin Jianhe's voice suddenly grew louder, filled with undisguised surprise. Ha! I knew my son was a genius. Look, he's already on the big list. What time is your match? Is it on TV? I need to find a way to watch it. Lin Jianhe was so excited that he was practically dancing with joy. Ah! It seems like the German third division, isn't broadcast in China. Why don't you wait until I finish the match and tell me the result? Lin Yi poured a bucket of cold water on Lin Jianhe's head. This immediately made Lin Jianhe's face fall over the phone. Chapter 16, The League Opens, A Strong Football Atmosphere. Over the next few days, Lin Yi followed the team in their intense pre-match preparations. Until Friday, the day before the game, in order to maintain their form, Daniel did not arrange too much training for the team this time. And the training session ended early. After training ended, Lin Yi did not continue with extra training. He was going to the supermarket outside the base to buy some daily necessities. And he must be there before 7 p.m. today. Because the supermarket closes at 7 o'clock. Moreover, the supermarkets will be closed tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, which is the weekend. This was something that Lin Yi, who was used to stores in China operating year-round, found very difficult to adapt to. But that's just their lifestyle. When you're on someone else's turf, you can only do as the locals do. If there's something you need to buy, you should make sure to get it all before the weekend. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until after the weekend to buy it. When Lin Yi reached the gate, he was stopped by Thomas, the security guard at the gate. Hey! Lin, where are you going? I'm going to buy some toiletries and some food. Lin Yi greeted the other person with a smile. Lin Yi made a deep impression on Thomas when he came for the trial. After he signed a contract with the team, the two quickly became acquainted. So every time Lin Yi went out, he would chat with the other person for a few minutes. I heard you made the competition roster. Congratulations. Thomas stroked his large beard and said with a smile. Thank you, Thomas. Will you be coming to the game? Are you inviting me? If so, then I think I'll go. Thomas said with a chuckle. That's great. I now formally invite you to come and watch our match. Lin Yi smiled as well. He then formally extended the invitation. Okay, I think I'll go. Although I prefer the first team's matches. But since you asked, I'll still go and support you. If you get to play, I'll cheer you on. So, try your best to get on the field. Thomas patted his chest with great pride. I will. Okay, I'm going now. With that, Lin Yi waved to Thomas and ran out of the base gate. After leaving the base, Lin Yi went straight to a supermarket near the base. At this time, the streets of Dortmund were already filled with a strong league atmosphere. Among the crowds coming and going, there were many people wearing Borussia Dortmund's yellow jerseys. They gathered in small groups, laughing and joking, preparing together for the league match that would begin tomorrow. Along the way, you can often see billboards with posters of major sports stars on them. Especially when he reached a busy intersection, there was a huge billboard, several meters high, standing on one of the street corners. On that billboard was a group photo of the entire Borussia Dortmund team. Led by the meritorious Captain Kyle, followed by Weidenfeller, Lewandowski, Hummels, Sabatic, Sven Bender, Götze, Kagawa. Looking at the faces on the billboards, faces I used to see often on TV, some flamboyant, some reserved, some arrogant, some kind, I felt a sense of loss. Lin Yi felt a surge of envy. As a football player, it's great to have your picture displayed on the busiest street corner in the city, admired by everyone passing by. What an honor! I wonder when I will be able to achieve such success. Lin Yi walked silently past the billboard, but he couldn't suppress the ambition in his heart. Upon arriving at the supermarket, I quickly bought what I needed. He then did not linger in the bustling market, but quickly returned to the training base. Back in the dorm, I put down the things I bought. Lin Yi picked up the soccer ball from the dormitory and ran straight out. He admitted that he was provoked. He now needs to calm his restless heart through rigorous training. Soon, the sound of kicking the ball echoed across the already dimly lit field. Lin Yi, soaked to the bone, finally returned to his dormitory at 9 o'clock in the evening. I sat down in the chair and brought up the system panel. After these days of training, his training points have accumulated to over 60. After exchanging for 3 points, Lin Yi added them all to his passing and receiving skills. The passing and receiving stats have been increased to 69. My passing accuracy has improved from 61 to 69, which is the result of my efforts in the past 2 weeks since joining Borussia Dortmund U23. Looking at the other values, there were basically no changes. It seems that if you don't rely on training points and only rely on the natural improvement from regular training, the progress will be quite slow. However, what comforted Lin Yi was that his physical fitness had changed after a period of hard training, from 66 to 68. His strength also increased by 1 point, becoming 66. His overall score also increased by 1 point, becoming 70. This rating is at the level of a substitute in an ordinary team in the top 5 leagues. This stirred a wave of excitement within him. It's wonderful to be able to clearly see my own progress. I can now be considered a player with the strength of the top 5 leagues. Clay Stadium is the home ground of Borussia Dortmund U23. The stadium can accommodate more than 9,000 spectators at the same time. Borussia Dortmund U23's third division was held at this stadium, where they hosted Regensburg. The match was scheduled for 2 p.m. The reason for scheduling the match so early is mainly to avoid clashing with Bundesliga matches during prime time in the evening. If the 3. Liga and the Bundesliga started at the same time, people would definitely all watch the Bundesliga. As for how many people will still pay attention to the German third division, that's hard to say. The Borussia Dortmund U23 players arrived at the stadium more than an hour early. At this time, small groups of fans had already begun to enter the stadium. Although it was just a third division match, it still had its share of supporters. Those fans who cannot afford expensive tickets to Bundesliga games will settle for the next best thing and choose to watch Bundesliga 2 or Bundesliga 3 games. In addition, there are the loyal supporters of some smaller teams. Even though their favorite teams are in lower-level leagues, they will still support them without complaint. Many teams in European leagues are amateur teams, and the players on these teams are not professional players. However, they also have no shortage of loyal supporters. Whenever the team has a game, these die-hard supporters will go to the stadium to cheer for the team. This can be considered a kind of traditional European football culture. This is the most fundamental reason why football in Europe is so developed. Because the mass base is deep enough. In China, let alone amateur teams, even second-tier teams like the Chinese Super League only have a handful of supporters. Only a few traditionally strong Chinese teams have a certain mass appeal. This explains why, despite having over 1 billion people, China struggles to make its football reach beyond Asia. Because you lack the fertile ground for football development from the very beginning. After arriving at the stadium with the team, Lin Yi went to warm up before the game under the guidance of the assistant coach. As soon as the players appeared on the field, the fans who had already come to the stands erupted in enthusiastic cheers. Hearing the cheers, Lin Yi instantly felt his whole body filled with power. Chapter 17, The Die-Hard Fans' Questions and the Rising Momentum of Borussia Dortmund U23. Karl is an intern reporter for Ruhr Sport. He was sent by the newspaper today to cover the German 3rd Division, 3. Liga, matches. He is a recent graduate who just graduated from the journalism program at Heidelberg University this year. When he first joined the newspaper, he could only start by reporting on these lower-level leagues. Karl did some careful preparation for today's report. We arrived at the stadium, Red Earth Stadium, very early. In the media section, at the designated spot for their own newspaper, cameras were set up. At the same time, he took out a camera and placed it beside him. Then he sat down in his seat. At this moment, the players from both sides are warming up before the game on the field. He observed the players on both sides of the field with great interest. I hope to find something interesting in it. His eyes narrowed quickly. Because he saw a figure with black hair and yellow skin on the field. He stood out among a large group of black and white players. Japanese? Or Korean? A question flashed through Karl's mind. Since there have been quite a few Japanese and Koreans playing football in Germany in recent years, his first thought was that the other player might be from Japan or South Korea. However, this question only flashed through my mind for a moment. Regardless of their nationality, they've probably just joined the team. He didn't care much about foreign players who had just joined the team. Since the other player has just joined the team, it's impossible for him to get a starting position. There's no need to invest too much concern in a substitute player. He needs to focus on observing the team's key players who have great potential. As time went on, more and more fans gathered in the stands. In the end, they almost filled the entire stadium stands. Actually, the attendance rate for regular German 3rd Division matches isn't usually this high. Today's main reason is because it's the opening match of the league. Fans who have been holding back for 2 or 3 months can no longer contain themselves. So it doesn't matter what kind of competition it is. Thomas, a security guard at Borussia Dortmund's youth training base, squeezed into the stands with several of his companions. Hey Thomas, I told you, what's so great about the 3. Liga? It's just kid stuff. We should be watching the Bundesliga. I'm going to cheer for Gotze. A somewhat bald, obese old man grumbled in dissatisfaction. He came with Thomas, but his face clearly showed reluctance. Yeah, with this blazing sun, we might as well go grab a couple of drinks. Another companion also complained with a displeased expression. These people were all summoned by Thomas. Although they are die-hard Borussia Dortmund fans, they usually follow the Bundesliga. They usually don't bother paying attention to second-string teams playing in the German 3rd Division. I promised a young man I'd bring my guys over to support him, so you guys are doing me a favor. I'll treat you to beer after the game. Thomas was a little embarrassed. Normally, he is a staunch Borussia Dortmund fan and a key figure in the south stand of Westfalenstadion. In his eyes, the German 3rd Division League was just a game of children playing house. He wouldn't even glance at it. But today, when he was facing that young Chinese man, he inexplicably agreed to come and watch his match. He later deeply regretted it. However, since we've already made the promise, we have to come and see it, even if it's a bit of a chore. But if he came alone, his buddies would find out and he'd be laughed at to death. So he immediately called over several of his closest friends. Since he had promised to buy them beer, the guys didn't refuse. That's why we're in this situation today. Which player sent you here specifically to watch? Was it Reina? I heard he's the midfield linchpin of this U23 team now, and it seems other Bundesliga teams are already keeping an eye on him. Another companion asked Thomas with some curiosity. It's that number 18. Thomas glanced at the players on the field and pointed to Lin Yi, who was wearing the number 18 Dortmund U23 jersey, and said. "Ha! Is he Asian? Japanese? No, he's Chinese. A Chinese person? Oh, that's rare. What's so interesting about a Chinese player? Thomas, I think you're really senile. You're wasting our time." The crowd immediately began to complain all at once. It's clear that Thomas made a huge fuss just to come and see a Chinese player. Don't let his Chinese background fool you, he's incredibly skilled. You'll see soon enough. Thomas reluctantly praised Lin Yi. Actually, he wasn't too clear about Lin Yi's specifics. "I just thought that since the other party was valued and kept by the U23 head coach, they must be pretty good. Oh, then we'll see just how good he is." The others were clearly not so easily fooled, but they finally quieted down. This relieved Thomas, but also made him a little nervous. "Young man from China, you'd better live up to my expectations. Otherwise, I'll lose all face." At 1:30 p.m., the players from both sides returned to the locker room after warming up. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. Inside the home team's locker room, Daniel stood in front of a group of players sitting upright, giving a pre-match pep talk. "Today is our first game of the season, and as you just saw, the stands are packed. They are full of fans who have high hopes for us. In this situation, I hope you can repay their support with a victory. Although our opponent is Regensburg, who finished 5th last season. But as long as you perform at your usual training level, we can easily defeat them. I will decide whether you can stay on the field based on your performance in this match. So if anyone tries to slack off on the field, then I'm sorry, I will make him sit on the bench for the rest of the game. So, keep going, guys. Victory is right in front of you. You just need to work hard to win it. Remember our pre-match tactics. Victory is ours." Daniel said, standing up and swinging his arm vigorously. "Victory." Team captain Kobel was the first to raise his arms and shout. "Victory! Victory! Victory!" The other players immediately joined in the chant. The entire locker room was immediately filled with shouts from the crowd. The team's morale was instantly boosted. "Very good. Let's go." Once the shouts from the crowd subsided, Daniel waved his hand and led the way out of the locker room, heading straight for the court. Behind him, a group of Dortmund U23 players followed closely. Chapter 18, The Powerful Regensburg, and the Furious Home Fans. On the field, the match between the two sides has been going on for more than 20 minutes. The score remains 0-0. Lin Yi was not assigned to the starting lineup by Daniel. So at this moment, he could only sit on the bench and watch the players from both sides go back and forth on the field. Is much stronger than Borussia Dortmund U23, which is in the middle of the 3rd division. Therefore, the situation on the field at this moment is somewhat unfavorable for the home team, Borussia Dortmund U23. The ball spent most of its time circling around Dortmund's half. Regensburg's defense was almost pushing up to the midfield line. Dortmund U23 could only defend their goal and try to defuse the opponent's relentless attacks. As for a counterattack, they seemed to lack the will but not the ability. Seeing the home team's passive situation, the home team fans in the stands were extremely anxious. The U23 team is still a bit weak. If the first team were here, they wouldn't be able to act so arrogantly. Who can argue with that? These young people are really worrying to watch. I wish I hadn't come. Isn't this just asking for trouble? The Bundesliga is still more exciting to watch, the 3rd division is really boring. You guys should be content. No matter what, the score is still 0-0. Maybe we can force them to tie in the end. Let's cheer for the team. Just as the home fans were still relieved that the score was still tied, the situation on the field suddenly changed. In the 24th minute of the match, Regensburg's Turkish striker Aliba took a long-range shot from outside the penalty area, which deflected off Dortmund defender Zaga's shin. Caught off guard, Kobel went in the wrong direction. The football flew into the net, grazing the inside of the right goalpost. The score was now 1-0. The Regensburg players celebrated wildly after scoring. Meanwhile, the stands were filled with sighs of despair. Oh my God! He managed to score that. That's utter garbage. Are our defenders all idiots? They let the opponent easily get a kick out from that position. Absolutely terrible. It's over. There's no hope for today. Sitting in the media section, Karl was immediately energized when he saw the goal finally scored. Although he works for Dortmund's media, he is not a Dortmund fan himself. Therefore, I didn't care too much about who was ahead or behind. Anyway, as long as he scores a goal, his press releases will have more material to cover. So he was hoping both sides would score more goals. He could certainly see that there was still a certain gap in strength between Dortmund U23 and Regensburg. After all, Borussia Dortmund U23 is only the reserve team of Borussia Dortmund club. The players here are all those who were rejected by the first team and had no chance to play for the first team. Most of them are young players in their teens and 20s. Regensburg, on the other hand, is a strong team in the third division, with many experienced adult players in their squad. Although in terms of football skills, they are not necessarily much better than the young players of Borussia Dortmund U23. However, their experience far surpasses that of the younger players. In a head-to-head comparison, Dortmund U23, lacking the superior strength, could only find themselves in a passive and defensive position. U23 cannot make timely adjustments in the later stages of the game, they may concede more goals. As it turned out, his inference was correct. Less than 5 minutes after the first goal, Regensburg scored their second. The goal was scored by Regensburg's 30-year-old veteran attacking midfielder, Kurz. Using his strong physique, he overpowered the Dortmund defender marking him during a corner kick header and headed the ball into the top corner of the goal. The score became 2-0. Before halftime, Regensburg already had a 2-goal lead away from home. At this point, even the most optimistic Borussia Dortmund fans knew that their team was far from winning. Thomas, I told you, there's nothing to watch in the third division. Look at how they're playing now, it's like dog shit. That Chinese kid you mentioned didn't even get a chance to play, and you still came all this way to support him. Looks like he's not very capable. I see. Let's leave the field early. Otherwise, the team will concede even more goals, which will be stressful. Thomas was being scolded by several old men around him. His expression was not very good. He glanced up at the field, a hint of hesitation flashing in his eyes. Wait a little longer. If that kid isn't substituted on in the second half, we'll leave. Thomas finally made up his mind. All right, consider it a show of support for you. You'd better treat us to a few drinks later. Yes. We must make sure you bleed properly. The group of friends complained, but they didn't mention leaving early. On the sidelines, Daniel's face looked extremely grim. He never expected his team to play so poorly in their first game. This was quite different from what he had expected. The expectation was that even if their own team was not as strong as the opponent, they could still put up a good fight and not look too bad, thanks to the home advantage. But reality slapped him hard in the face. Their own team was so easily defeated. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. Before halftime, they were already down by 2 goals. In this situation, there is no point in continuing to hold out. No matter how you play on your home turf, you can't let someone else slam you. So when the team kicked off from midfield, he waved his hand, signaling the players on the field to push forward. The Dortmund players were also incredibly frustrated. Seeing the head coach's gesture now, I couldn't hold back anymore. The entire formation began to press forward. Regensburg's head coach, Whiteberg, immediately responded to Dortmund's U23 lineup changes. He gestured, causing the team to retreat and begin playing a comfortable defensive counterattack. Facing Regensburg's defensive line formed after they retreated, Dortmund initially tried to use a central penetration style of play. After all, a direct attack down the middle lane poses the greatest threat. However, they soon discovered that the enemy had amassed an overwhelming force in the middle lane. There was simply no way to break through the other party's layers of barriers. Left with no other option, they had to change their strategy to breaking through on the flanks and then crossing the ball. This will put their wingers to the test. Moukoko, who started as the left winger, was very frustrated with the game. At the start of the match, Dortmund was on the defensive. There aren't many opportunities for him here. Now that they are finally behind, the team has started to launch an attack. Moreover, his main attacking direction is on the flanks. This made him think that his opportunity had finally arrived. He had already begun to imagine how he could turn the tide and help the team ultimately win by playing exceptionally well. I will definitely become a hero of the entire Red Land Stadium at that time. Then he was called up to the first team, became a superstar, married a beautiful and wealthy woman, and reached the pinnacle of his life. In that brief moment, he had even already prepared his acceptance speech when he won the Golden Globe Award. However, reality soon slapped him hard in the face, completely shattering his beautiful dream. Chapter 19, Moukoko is injured and forced to leave the field. Lin Yi makes his debut. The 36th minute of the match, Moukoko received a pass from his teammate on the left flank of the attacking third. He pulled the ball back, turned, and then pushed it forward, trying to use his speed to get past Regensburg's right back, Loedo, who was coming up to defend him. This is one of his specialties. Using their superior speed on the wing, they can dribble past defenders and then cross from the byline, or cut inside directly. In previous matches, he has used this tactic many times to help his team achieve success. But today seems a little different. Loedo, who was pressed tightly against his inner side, also seemed to be moving quite fast. In particular, this guy is very strong. Don't be fooled by the fact that he's only about 1.7 meters tall, his muscular physique is no joke. Moukoko was simply no match for his opponent in their confrontation. I tried to overtake using my speed, but the other car was just as fast, sticking tightly to the inside like a leech, impossible to shake off. And so, he could only keep dribbling the ball forward along the sideline. However, Loedo clearly wouldn't give him a chance to break through. Seizing the opportunity, he made a fierce tackle on Moukoko's head, pulling him and the ball out of bounds. Beep. The referee blew his whistle, but instead of calling a foul on Loedo, he awarded Regensburg a throw-in. Because the ball eventually hit Moukoko's foot and went out of bounds. This infuriated Moukoko. Find the referee's theory. They got to the ball first, so there was no foul. The referee said to Moukoko with great certainty. As he spoke, he pointed to his eyes. That means I can see very clearly, so stop nagging. This infuriated Moukoko, but he was powerless to do anything about it. After that, Moukoko's several breakthroughs failed to achieve the expected results. On the contrary, he strained his thigh during a breakthrough. Seeing Moukoko lying on the ground, clutching his leg and looking pained, Daniel on the sidelines felt like punching him. This is truly a case of misfortunes never coming singly. Their attack was already going poorly, and now their key player is injured. This is God's will to kill me. Soon, the team doctor rushed onto the field and gestured for him to be substituted. Daniel could only sigh helplessly. He turned to look at the substitutes bench. At this moment, the players on the substitute bench were all dejected. Clearly, the team's poor performance also affected their form. This made Daniel shake his head. This state, once changed, has absolutely no effect. That's. Just as Daniel's gaze swept over Lin Yi, he saw a pair of bright eyes. His gaze was completely different from that of his teammates. It was filled with longing and a fighting spirit eager to try. Thinking of their performance in training, that lightning-fast speed. Perhaps this would be a good choice. Daniel waved to Lin Yi. Lin, go warm up. 2 minutes later, Moukoko, whose thigh had undergone initial treatment, was carried off the field on a stretcher. Lin Yi ran onto the field after receiving permission from the head coach. The moment Lin Yi rushed onto the court, a system voice suddenly sounded in his mind. System task triggered, career debut. The system will reward or punish the host based on their performance on the field. Upon hearing this voice, Lin Yi's heart stirred. Unexpectedly, another mission has been assigned. But what does the system mean by giving rewards and punishments based on performance? Does that mean I'll be punished if I don't perform well? Then I'd better do my best. With this thought in mind, Lin Yi ran onto the court. When Moukoko saw Lin Yi run onto the field to replace him, a shadow crossed his eyes. His injury wasn't actually serious. After some simple treatment, he's now able to limp around the sidelines, supported by someone. Instead of going to the hospital for further treatment, he went straight to the substitute seat. He wanted to see what kind of performance that Chinese kid could deliver after replacing him. Lin Yi was seen being substituted onto the field. The home fans at the stadium had a lukewarm response. Especially after seeing Lin Yi's Asian face, they had no hope whatsoever. There's nothing we can do, Asian football is just not very good. However, somewhere in the stands, one person became excited. Hey, hey, hey. Look, the young man I was talking about is finally going on stage. Let's cheer him on. Thomas excitedly grabbed a few of his companions and shouted. Thomas, stay calm. He just came on as a substitute, so we don't know how he'll perform yet. Don't get too excited. You'll be embarrassed if he doesn't perform well. Yeah, didn't you see that little black guy couldn't break through the situation? I don't think an Asian like him can solve the problem. Daniel's coaching level for the reserve team is still a bit lacking. His ability to arrange the lineup and deploy the players is really poor. I guess he's just grasping at straws right now. What special skills could a Chinese person possibly have? This isn't a game of table tennis. I just hope he doesn't get too badly thrashed later. Hearing the mockery from his friends, Thomas wanted to refute them, but couldn't find a good way to put it. Even he himself wasn't entirely sure whether that Chinese kid was reliable or not. Kid, I hope you won't let me down. In the end, Thomas could only pray silently in his heart. Meanwhile, in the media section, Karl shook his head slightly when he saw that Dortmund U23 had brought on an Asian player, and that this player was not one of the key players he had studied before arriving. It seems that Dortmund's U23 team really doesn't have much talent. They actually substituted an Asian player at a critical moment. He didn't think there was anything special about this Asian player. If someone were truly exceptional, they wouldn't be sitting on the substitute bench. Perhaps Daniel has already given up and is ready to throw caution to the wind. Since we can't win the competition anyway, we might as well train the newcomers. At this point, no one believed that Lin Yi could help the team change anything. Lin Yi's first touch of the ball after coming on seemed to confirm everyone's guess. That was an attacking opportunity for Dortmund. Reina delivered a diagonal pass from midfield, finding Lin Yi who was moving on the wing. When Lin Yi stretched out his leg to receive the ball, he did not judge the speed of the ball well, causing the ball to bounce a long distance when it touched his ankle. By the time he tried to chase after him, Loato, who was defending him, had already gotten the ball first. Before Lin Yi could come up to counterattack, the opponent kicked the ball forward with a long kick. Since this was a crucial attacking opportunity for Dortmund, their defense was inevitably somewhat vulnerable. Loato's pass was so precise that it tore apart Dortmund's defense. Regensburg striker Kurz reacted very quickly, making a forward run and successfully beating the offside trap to create a one-on-one opportunity. However, his final shot was blocked by Dortmund goalkeeper Kobel's foot. The football changed direction and hit the goalpost. It bounced out of bounds. Borussia Dortmund escaped a disaster. However, the fans were very dissatisfied with Lin Yi's performance just now. Chapter 20. Even when condemned by thousands, I will never give up. Oh my God. That scared me to death. I thought that was going in again. Thanks to Kobel for his excellent performance. Was that Chinese kid here to cause trouble? That Chinese kid's ball control was terrible. I really don't know why Daniel brought him up here. I'm starting to despair about today's game. That black guy didn't play well either, but at least he could control the ball. But this guy can't even control the ball properly. No wonder he can only be a substitute. Okay, let's watch a little longer. We'll leave during halftime. I can't watch this game anymore. If I do, it'll give me a heart attack. The home fans in the stands applauded when Kober made the save. At the same time, they were very dissatisfied with Lin Yi's performance. They had already concluded that Lin Yi was a fraud and there was nothing to see there. Thomas in the stands fell silent, no longer showing the excitement he had when Lin Yi came on. Seeing his expression, his companions did not make any sarcastic remarks. Instead, she looked at him with pity. They can understand the feeling when their favorite players don't perform well. Some friends even came up and patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. Alright, buddy, you've done your duty as a fan. Maybe that young man still needs to hone his skills. Perhaps he'll improve in time. Yes, after all, not many players can have a smooth start. Alright, let's leave here and grab a drink. But the beer's on you. Hearing his companion's words, Thomas forced a smile, shook his head, and said, "No, I want to watch a little longer. I think that child needs more support and encouragement right now." As he spoke, he suddenly cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted loudly towards the field, "Lin, go for it." Seeing Thomas's actions, the old guys were somewhat helpless. On the field, Lin Yi was pondering his ball control from just now. He misjudged the ball's speed when he stopped it, which caused him to stop it too far. Moreover, the Regensburg player who was defending him just now reacted very quickly. "I made such a small mistake, and the other party caught me red-handed." It seems there are quite a few talented players among the teams in the German third division. However, just as he was deep in thought, Loedo, who had just stolen the ball from Lin Yi's foot, walked over leisurely. With a mocking smile, he patted Lin Yi on the shoulder and said, "Thanks for your pass earlier. Keep it up next time." After saying that, he burst into laughter. The laughter was full of sarcasm. "Holy shit! Holy shit! Holy shit!" Lin Yi clenched his fists, desperately suppressing the urge to throw a punch and smash that hateful face flat. "You just wait. We've got a grudge now, and I'll make you kneel down and sing, 'I Surrender,' later." Lin Yi made a harsh statement and ran towards his own half of the field, preparing to participate in the defense of this corner kick. Loedo was stunned for a moment after hearing Lin Yi's threat. Then he became furious. He was being threatened by an unknown newcomer. How could a player nearing 30 tolerate this? So he quickly followed. "We must keep a tight grip on the opponent and not give him any chance. I'll see who will kneel down and sing the song of surrender in the end." At this moment, Regensburg's corner kick taker, Baribas, had already placed the ball in the corner area. The referee saw that both teams were ready in the penalty area and blew his whistle. Upon hearing the whistle, Baribas immediately kicked the ball out. He kicked the ball into the middle of the penalty area. Both players jumped simultaneously to contest the header. In the end, it was Dortmund U23's tall central defender Zagadou who headed the ball first. He headed the ball directly out of the penalty area. This was a successful header clearance. However, Regensburg didn't seem to care much. Normally, at this point, one of Regensburg's defenders or defensive midfielders would be waiting in the center circle, then come forward, receive the ball, and organize another attack. However, Dortmund U23's defense will be set up quickly, not giving the opponent too many opportunities. Then both sides will engage in positional warfare. Ultimately, who will have the last laugh depends on the actual circumstances. Regensburg's defensive midfielder Timur is now preparing to do just that. He ran towards the football. The goal is to quickly control the incoming football and launch a fast counterattack. But he soon realized something was wrong. Because he noticed someone on the other side was rapidly approaching him, and also approaching the football. Holy crap! That's... A sudden gasp rippled through the stands. Lin Yi saw Zagadou head the ball towards him, and after estimating its trajectory, he realized he couldn't catch it. Because the ball was heading towards the area behind him. However, Lin Yi did not give up, but turned around and chased after him. The football travels very fast, so he runs very fast too, and he dashes out as soon as he starts. Like a bolt of lightning, it shot towards the football. Loedo, who had been keeping a close eye on Lin Yi, saw Lin Yi turn around to chase the football and quickly followed. My dear reader, there's more to this chapter. Please click the next page to continue reading, it'll be even more exciting later. To his shock, however, he realized that he couldn't keep up with the other person's speed at all. What kind of speed is that? Mauricio felt like he was chasing a cheetah sprinting at full speed. No matter how hard he swung his legs, he couldn't close the distance with the cheetah. Not only does it fail to shorten the distance between the two parties, but it also causes them to drift further and further apart. This discovery immediately shocked him. How is that possible? I am one of the fastest players in the Regensburg team. Many forwards known for their speed would have to admit defeat in front of him. Now they've been completely outmatched by some unknown Asian kid. This is simply unbelievable. In a great hurry, Loader quickly pushed off with his feet again, trying to make one more effort. But unexpectedly, his foot slipped. Caught off guard, he lost his balance and fell face-first into the air. They could only watch Lin Yi's back as he quickly disappeared from their sight. Lin Yi, who was being stared at, was completely unaware of the pitiful Loader behind him. At that moment, all he could see was the football flying through the air and Timur heading towards it. In terms of distance, Timur was actually closer to the ball than he was. Moreover, football and he are moving in the same direction. In this situation, Timur will definitely touch the ball first. However, Lin Yi did not give up chasing the football, instead, he increased his speed once again. Like a sharp arrow, it pierced straight into the spot where the football was about to land. I will never give up.